Night fell, and for the first time Moon Shadow Manor lit up with lights. Lu Chen sat down to the dinner Laya had prepared. Simple, but still better than roadside barbecue. And once it was done, Aina brought him the manor's first inventory report, full of miscellaneous expenses. He barely glanced at it before pressing 2,000 gold coins into her hands, telling her to go buy whatever was needed and come back if it wasn't enough, but to make sure everything was installed properly. Aina agreed at once, then hesitated and added that Nora had already prepared his bath. Lu Chen was caught off guard. There was even this kind of service, and went straight over. Late that night, Nora came to his room with a hot drink, dressed now in a softer black and white maid gown, her long gray hair loose over her shoulders. She was introduced as the bedtime maid, her expertise listed as close care, night watch, emotional comfort, and secret service. She explained that the calming honey milk was Leah's work, and that Aina had suggested he drink some after the day's battle and manor business. Its effect was mental relaxation and a slight boost to fatigue recovery. He found it delicious, and after a few sips she asked, softly, whether he wanted her to stay the night. He set the cup down without answering right away, her cheeks coloring faintly, then simply patted the bed and told her to come. She drew a breath, shed the outer dress down to her nightgown, movements careful, and when he finally spoke, it was only to tell her to sleep. She murmured her agreement, and the night passed with nothing more than that. The next morning Nora was already up before him, warm water waiting by the bed and his clothes laid out, her manner far more at ease than the night before. She greeted him, told him Aina was waiting downstairs, and mentioned that the Black Gold Chamber of Commerce had sent an invitation that morning. Downstairs, Aina held out a gold-stamped letter inviting him to the high-end auction in Blackstone City, 3 days out, held in the chamber's second-floor auction hall. Open to the city's high-tier adventurers, chamber representatives, noble stewards, and special contributors, with the option to submit items or simply bid. Reading it, Lu Chen felt the timing couldn't be better. He was sitting on more valuable stock than he knew what to do with, things like withered spring spirit dew, sunken wood anti-poison pills, a batch of lifespan crystals, or a rare-grade life-saving item. And he could use the event to test the waters. When he asked what else the messenger had said, Aina told him the chamber had offered to waive the handling fee and throw in a VIP box if he was willing to supply the finale item. Nora chimed in that his reputation alone would draw both players and NPCs the moment word got out that an item was tied to him, and Aina agreed. After a moment's thought, Lu Chen decided on the withered spring spirit dew and a batch of lifespan fruit. 10 bottles of the dew, 10 pieces of the fruit. Enough, he figured, to send the NPCs into a frenzy. He then asked Aina to check what the manor still needed, and whether the spirit peach pits planted the day before had shown any signs of life. She pulled out a list. Most urgent were materials to repair the barrier and a barrier master to do the work, and after that, the matter of the fruit pits. They were growing normally, but without life soil and a lifespan spirit spring, they weren't likely to sprout anytime soon. When he pointed out that he'd already given her longevity soil and spirit liquid, she explained those only covered ordinary needs. The spirit peach pits weren't normal seeds and demanded a far stronger life aura and spirit spring than what he'd supplied. He filed that away to look into later and sat down to breakfast. Silverfish soup and roasted meat rolls from Laya, with Nora pouring honey water at his side, a feeling he found thoroughly satisfying. On impulse, he tossed a spring longevity spirit peach to each of the maids, and the gift stunned all 5 of them speechless. A peach that added 50 years of lifespan just handed out, 1 to each of them, was an almost absurd extravagance. While they were still reeling, he pulled out a pile of his own lifespan materials and worked through them one after another. 10 lifespan fruit consumed for 50 years, 10 lifespan crystals absorbed for 10 years, and 5 spring longevity peaches eaten outright for 250 years. Aina could only stare, half in disbelief that he was eating peaches like this were ordinary fruit, wondering aloud if there was any limit left to how people were supposed to live. After breakfast, the manor came properly to life. Decorators decorating, cleaners cleaning, farmers farming. And over the following 3 days, Lu Chen ran no more hidden dungeons, spending his days clearing ordinary dungeons outside the city and his nights back at Moon Shadow Manor, all while having Aina oversee the renovations. By the 3rd day, the manor had shed its earlier air of neglect, and his gains over those 3 days were nothing to scoff at either. 310 years of lifespan added on the 1st day, and another 310 on the 3rd, pushing his total from 903 years all the way up to 1837. The moment that number refreshed, it nearly turned the Blue Star lifespan leaderboard on its head. Night God of the Daxia region sitting first at 1837 years, with Augustus of the Europe region a distant second at 236, Balu of the Daxia region 3rd at 231, Miyamoto Sosuke of the Sakura district 4th at 227, and Thunder God Thomas of the North America region 5th at 223. Looking over the board, Lu Chen smiled. The gap wasn't just widening anymore. It wasn't even a generational gap. It was a cliff. His level had climbed to 26 as well. His character panel now read, Nickname Night God, Level 26, Class Blood Shadow Hunter, Lifespan 1837 years, HP 8,100 8,100ths, Mana 3,350 3,350ths, Physical Attack 1385, Agility 735, Spirit 286, Critical Rate 74%. His weakness damage bonus greatly amplified by the stacking of the Mist Shadowhunter suit, the Soul Hunting mark, and his class specialty, and his core gear listed as the Mist Shadowhunter 8-piece suit plus 10, the Beast Cage Soul Hunting Bow Excellent Grade plus 10, and the Black Crystal Hunter Crown Excellent Grade plus 10. He looked it over and nodded, satisfied. Not bad, barely passable. On the afternoon of the third day, Aina came to find him in the study to say there were only 2 hours left before the black gold auction. He asked if the items were ready, and she confirmed they were already prepared. Satisfied, he told her to finish getting ready and come with him. She was briefly caught off guard, then bowed her head and agreed. 2 hours later, the black gold auction had begun. 2 hours later, they arrived at the Black Gold Chamber of Commerce. Its building sitting in the most prosperous stretch of Blackstone City's main street. Chamber guards flanking the entrance and a crowd of curious players already gathered outside. Buzzing with rumors that night, God himself had items going up for auction that night, including some whispered things tied to lifespan itself. A black carriage pulled up, and Aina stepped down first in her black and white butler dress, invitation and auction voucher in hand, before Lu Chen followed, his equipment's glow all but blinding the onlookers, who reacted with a mixture of shock at his radiance and disbelief at the rumor that he'd bought his manor for a sum equivalent to 300,000 gold coins. Ignoring the commotion, he let Aina guide him inside, where the receptionist treated him with immediate deference and led them to a private VIP box on the second floor overlooking the auction hall below. Once seated, Aina handed him the evening's item list. A string of respectable but unremarkable lots, skill books, blueprints, mounts, mining rights, none of which stirred much interest in him, since what he lacked least were ordinary goods. The auction opened with a rare-grade shield skill book that sold briskly for thousands of gold, then moved through blueprints and mounts at a steady pace. Lu Chen watching without much reaction, brushing off Aina's quiet question about whether he wanted the skill book with a flat, "The grade is too low." Half an hour in, the tone shifted. The auctioneer, a woman named Philora, unveiled 10 bottles of Withered Spring Spirit Dew as the night's first special item, credited openly to Meshter, Night God, and the hall erupted, bidding climbing from a modest opening price into the tens of purple gold coins before a Pharmacists Association representative finally won it at a startling sum, leaving Aina visibly surprised at how far above expectation the price had run, though Lu Chen took it in stride. Then came the second special lot. A batch of lifespan fruit, each capable of adding years to a person's life. And Philora began to describe its properties as the crowd's murmurs sharpened into something hungrier still. The lifespan fruit lot sent the crowd into a frenzy the moment its worth was announced. 10 pieces meaning 50 years of life. And both players and NPCs threw themselves into bidding, the price rocketing from 10 purple gold coins up past 100 before an elderly noble finally claimed it for 160, a number that left the hall stunned and left Aina quietly unsettled, having watched Lu Chen eat similar peaches like ordinary breakfast fruit that very morning. He merely noted the price was not bad and lost interest in what followed, until an unassuming, dried-out spirit spring stone came up for auction, dismissed by the crowd as worthless decoration. And Aina suddenly whispered to him that, according to her research, the stone could guide them toward a lifespan spirit spring, which would be invaluable for reviving their manor's peach trees. That was enough. Lu Chen began bidding with deliberate extravagance, jumping the price from 100 gold coins to 1,000, then to purple gold coins, driving the number higher and higher until the entire hall assumed the stone held some hidden value simply because he wanted it. And in a private box across the hall, the vice president of the Black Crow Chamber of Commerce, Rosen, took the bait and pushed the price to 80 purple gold coins to squeeze him. At which point, Lu Chen calmly withdrew, letting Rosen's chamber win the treasure they now believed they'd secured, at a devastating price for something he'd made appear precious purely through his own reputation. The moment Lu Chen dropped out of the bidding, Rosen's smug composure collapsed. He'd meant only to bait Night God into overpaying, never expected to be stuck holding a stone nobody wanted, and now his own chamber had spent a fortune on what looked like scrap. The hall buzzed with mockery once the hammer fell. Everyone's certain the Black Crow chamber had been outmaneuvered, while Lu Chen sat back with quiet satisfaction, telling Aina simply that Rosen would come to him, and that they should keep watching the rest of the auction. From then on, the whole room grew wary of his every glance, assuming any item he looked at twice must be secretly valuable, though no one dared bid against him anymore for fear of being played the same way. Still, he picked up a few more genuinely useful things. Near the end, the night's grand finale, a rare-grade blueprint for repairing large barrier structures, came up, and this time he didn't wait to needle anyone, immediately bidding it up and eventually winning it for 300 purple gold coins, exactly what his damaged manor barrier needed. Leaving the hall, Rosen caught up with him as expected, proposing a partnership to split whatever value the stone held, first 50-50, then sweetening it in his own favor, as Lu Chen stayed unmoved, until finally, once Rosen handed the stone back to him outright to build trust, Lu Chen pulled an identical stone from his own bag and revealed the truth. He'd had an infinite supply the whole time, and the whole auction spectacle had been pure theater. Rosen was left staring at the pair of worthless-seeming stones in his hands, utterly humiliated, storming off with his manager in tow. Back in the carriage, Aina remarked that Rosen probably wouldn't sleep well that night, and Lu Chen replied dryly that spending 80 purple gold coins on decorations was nothing to lose sleep over. He'd even get to brag about it later. What neither Rosen nor anyone else knew was that the stone had already become infinite in Lu Chen's inventory the moment he first obtained it, and its true property, that greater quantities gave more precise guidance toward a hidden spring vein, was exactly the kind of problem he could simply brute force. Back at Moonshadow Manor, Nora greeted him warmly, mentioning that the other maids had stayed up waiting for news. And once inside, Aina immediately shifted into her housekeeper role, organizing the household to gather at the herb field. There, Lu Chen produced a single dried spirit spring stone, and the newly planted peach pit visibly reacted. Confirmation enough. He then summoned an overwhelming pile of the stones, 10, 100, 10,000, blanketing the entire herb field until they all began glowing faintly in the same direction, pointing the group toward the manor's long-neglected back lake. What had seemed like a dead, spiritless body of water turned out to conceal a depleted lifespan spirit spring vein beneath it. A discovery that thrilled Lu Chen, since it explained why a noble hunter family had once owned this land. He immediately set to work, reviving it, first using his newly acquired blueprint to repair and upgrade the manor's barrier, successfully activating a primary-tier guardian barrier, and then pouring rare and excellent-grade materials into the reawakening process, watching the spring's revival tick forward at a painfully slow 1% even as the dormant peach pit began, ever so faintly, to stir. Accepting that this would take time, he handed the ongoing task to Aina and turned to Nora for the rest of the evening. The next morning, Nora had everything ready before he even woke, and over breakfast Lu Chen watched his lifespan tick past 2,000 years, the Blue Star leaderboard refreshing to show him miles ahead of everyone else. Augustus, Balu, Miyamoto Sosuke, Thunder God Thomas, all left in the dust. And the regional chat channels erupted in disbelief once the number posted, players and NPCs alike questioning whether he was even human anymore. He casually posted a picture of himself eating a longevity peach for breakfast, which only deepened the collective bewilderment before he closed the channel and headed out, tearing open a teleport scroll to reach the Hunter Association, now noticeably busier with newly arrived, lower-level players talking about following in his footsteps. At the counter, the hunter Alice showed him the latest shop stock, and he picked up 2 of the 3 new items, judging the third, survival rations, beneath his needs. Association President Grayson came down to needle him about constantly restocking, then turned warmer, praising him for having solo killed the mother deer and joking about not having seen the woman named Selena in a while. Their conversation was cut short when a badly wounded young hunter burst into the lobby, collapsing to his knees to report that a strange, anomalous zone had appeared near the eastern gray mist outpost. 26 hunters sent in, only 1 had escaped, and his final words before collapsing were the cryptic phrase, "The sky is below." The hunter's cryptic last words rattled everyone, and moments later a system notice confirmed the danger. An anomalous dungeon had appeared, registered for a small party but clearly lethal, tied to the deaths of an entire forest patrol squad. Grayson wanted to escalate the matter to higher-level hunters or the city guard, refusing to let Lu Chen go alone into something so unstable. But with the guards conveniently occupied elsewhere and no other option available, he reluctantly relented, extracting a promise that Lu Chen would only investigate and prioritize his own safety. Handed a pass badge for the outpost, Lu Chen set off, using speed potions and teleport scrolls to cut a half-hour journey down to 10 minutes, arriving to find the gray mist outpost bloodied and its wounded being tended by guards, while overhead a courtyard hung suspended and inverted, its roof facing down, its ground facing up, tree roots dangling from where the sky should be. Once he stepped through the dungeon's entrance, the inversion swallowed him too, gravity flipping so that what should have been the sky now sat beneath his feet. And after confirming his movements and aim still worked normally, he pressed forward, discovering scattered hunter corpses and, shortly after, packs of undead wing creatures roosting above him like bats. A fight broke out as they dove at him from the inverted eaves. He cleared them methodically with flash steps and arrow barrages, then continued on to find a badge belonging to a fallen hunter named Locke, along with a hastily scrawled note describing the squad's last stand, sealing themselves in to protect dozens of civilians still trapped at the outpost, refusing to retreat even as their situation worsened, closing with the line that they had not disgraced the hunters. Lu Chen pocketed the record and pressed deeper into the dungeon. Deeper in, the space ahead warped and a towering armored monster emerged, its body looking stitched back together by the dungeon's broken geometry. A rare elite patroller whose blade attacks came not from where it stood but from beneath Lu Chen's own feet, forcing him to grasp the spatial nature of its assault on the fly. He activated his hunting domain to sharpen his perception of its weak points, landed a burst arrow to its chest, then watched it split into 3 afterimages, only one of which was real. His gear let him tell the difference easily, and a follow-up judgment arrow tore through its actual core, dropping its health by more than half. The creature responded by folding the terrain itself, sending Lu Chen plummeting toward a lower void, and only a substitution technique, sacrificing a decoy clone to swap places, saved him from the fall. He reappeared just as the monster withdrew its blade, and finished it with a flurry of arrows before it could recover, earning a solid haul of experience and a strange item that entered his inventory as an infinite resource. Reflecting on the fight, he recognized this dungeon's real danger wasn't raw monster health, but its disorienting, punishing mechanics. Anyone without his layered survival skills would likely have died there, pressing on through an inverted garden lined with hunter corpses that briefly animated into illusions before he dispersed them with a scattering powder. He reached a massive stone gate guarded by an even larger construct assembled from rubble, broken armor, and the weapons of dead hunters. This boss fought with bidirectional gravity attacks, forcing him to guard against strikes from both above and below. Its defense strong enough to blunt his area attacks until he located its true weak point on its back and used a teleport skill to strike it directly, chipping its health down in stages even as it triggered a terrain collapse mechanic meant to drag him down with it. With only 10 seconds and one small platform of ground left beneath him, he refused to retreat, chaining his remaining cooldowns and burst damage to destroy its core just before the countdown expired, earning a hefty reward alongside a level up that pushed his agility higher. Beyond the collapsing arena, a huge inverted corridor opened, at the end of which floated a silver-white fragment engraved with ancient characters, a piece of something called a Sky City trial entrance. And as he approached it, the dungeon flagged this as the first of 3 clue pieces toward a hidden final boss deeper within. Without hesitation, he chose to continue. Stepping into the corridor, the whole space began inverting chaotically around him, and out of the churn walked a robed, 4-winged figure carrying a staff embedded with silver-white fragments, one matching the piece he'd just found. This was the dungeon's final gatekeeper, a being that had once consumed the combat memories of entire hunter squads, and clearly a tier above anything he'd faced inside the court so far. It taunted him, asking if he too intended to stay behind forever, and Lu Chen answered that he'd come to take the fallen hunters home, drawing his bow as the gatekeeper unleashed a barrage of reversing feather blades from every direction at once. He weaved through the first wave with a flash step, locked onto the crystal core atop its staff, and landed a heavy weak point hit that dropped its health sharply. But the gatekeeper answered by inverting gravity itself, sending him plunging while more blades slashed at him mid-fall. Only his hunting domain and careful platform hopping kept him alive long enough to land another burst arrow. Rather than press the advantage, the boss summoned a dozen translucent hunter afterimages, the memories of dead rangers it had devoured, to shield itself, and Lu Chen, though visibly unsettled by the tactic, cut through them with an arrow rain, one of them regaining lucidity in its final moment to ask whether the outpost had held. He told it yes, and it dissolved peacefully into light. Furious at the boss's use of the dead as a shield, He pressed forward, but the gatekeeper folded the corridor to appear instantly beside him, landing a heavy blow that only his barrier and a defensive skill kept from being fatal, using the opening to unleash a faster, deadlier second wave of feather blades. Activating his own speed-boosting state, Lu Chen weaved through the assault and found a new weak point: the core of the stone door on the gatekeeper's back. Realizing with surprise that the door itself was the boss's true body. When it turned the door to shield its front, he threw out a decoy that mimicked his own voice to distract it, just long enough to flash step behind it and land a massive hit, dropping its health below half and triggering a violent shaking throughout the dungeon as the boss began retreating into the closing stone door, threatening that if it escaped, the dungeon's instability would spread further. Refusing to let the gatekeeper escape, Lu Chen threw down a trapping array to slow the closing door, followed it up with an animal trap and hunting net to further hinder its retreat, and unleashed a string of burst arrows that blew half its body back out into the open, feathers spraying wildly as he pushed forward through the damage. Its health dropped below 200,000, triggering one final gravity inversion that sent him falling toward the lower void with a 10-second countdown to his doom. But with his domain buffs still active and his strongest arrow skill off cooldown, he loosed a final shot mid-fall that tore straight through the staff's crystal core, ending the fight completely. The dungeon rewarded him generously. Experience, reputation, rare materials, and 2 odd equipment drops that turned out to be a hat with mild anti-confusion properties and, bafflingly, a maid's dress once belonging to a court noblewoman, whose description included an effect he found utterly ridiculous. Setting his amusement aside, he pocketed both items to show the manor's staff later, and as he did, the 3 silver fragments from throughout the dungeon fused together into a single key. A rare, non-duplicable item, unlocking something called the Sky City Tongtian Pagoda, a public challenge tower with no floor limit, better rewards the higher one climbed, and a weekly challenge limit that his key doubled just for him. Without hesitation, he chose to open the challenge area, triggering a citywide announcement crediting him with clearing the anomalous dungeon and unlocking the new content, sparking immediate excitement across Blackstone City. Back at the outpost, the dungeon began collapsing behind him as he handed the recovered hunter badges to the surviving guards, who received them with quiet, emotional gratitude, before he took a portal scroll back to the city. Back in Blackstone City, the central square was in an uproar, a massive stone gate now suspended above it, leading into the newly opened Sky City Tower, and crowds of players gathered eagerly beneath it. Thrilled by the promise of infinite floors and escalating rewards, though the mood soured fast once the first wave of overconfident challengers came flying back out. The first floor alone packed with fast, knockback-heavy flying monsters and a fatal penalty of 2 years of lifespan for any failure. A player named Bai, he stood at the edge of the crowd, taking careful notes from those who'd been ejected rather than rushing in himself, reasoning to his companion Wild Blade that, unlike Night God, they only got 1 shot a week and couldn't afford to waste it, testing the waters blind. Balu arrived shortly after, now visibly stronger than before, and after brushing off the crowd's chatter and declining Bai's offer to sell her his notes, she went in alone, only to be ejected minutes later. Failing on the 6th floor, still an impressive showing that left the crowd stunned, especially once she detailed how paralyzing Lightning Eagle monsters made the floor brutal for solo support players. Wild Blade tried next and was thrown out even earlier, on the 5th floor, undone by narrow platforms and monsters that could knock him off despite his melee prowess. As Balu wondered aloud where Night God was, Lu Chen appeared, having just gotten back from the auction dungeon and not yet having entered the tower himself, admitting flatly that he hadn't been in yet. A fact Balu had momentarily forgotten. He handed over his compiled notes, which Lu Chen accepted with quiet approval, and Balu pointedly reminded him that with only 1 weekly attempt for most people, but 2 for him as key holder, he couldn't afford to waste the opportunity. A comment Lu Chen teased her about, asking if she was worried about him, to which she answered, smiling, that so what if she was. Amused by her bluntness, Lu Chen offered to thank her properly and, without much ceremony, handed over the maid outfit he'd looted earlier as a gift. Balu admired it briefly, thinking it genuinely attractive, until she actually read its description and her face went crimson with fury, swinging her staff at his head as he yelped and fled by random teleport scrolls straight to the tower's entrance, hurling insults at her over his shoulder as she stamped her feet in rage, swearing revenge while he wisely kept his mouth shut about what exactly the outfit had said. At the gate, the system confirmed his 2 available challenges for the week, and he entered without hesitation as the crowd below speculated wildly about how many floors he'd manage. Inside, he found himself on a floating platform in an endless sea of clouds, 30 flying wind monsters immediately swarming him. A fight that proved trivial for him cleared in under 10 seconds with a sweeping arrow rain and follow-up strikes. He blazed through the next several floors with barely a pause, monster numbers and platform hazards increasing but posing no real threat, until the 6th floor introduced faster, paralyzing lightning eagles, which he dispatched efficiently by flash-stepping past their charges and striking their weak points directly. Floors 7 through 9 escalated the same threats further, but a defensive barrier scroll handled the worsening wind walls easily enough. And by the 10th floor, he faced a large stage guardian flying beast that he one-shot with a single well-placed weak point arrow, clearing the first 10-floor stage and earning a hefty batch of rewards, including gear he judged mostly useful for others rather than himself. The moment his 10th floor clear registered, Blackstone City's tower leaderboard refreshed to name him the new record holder. Down in the square, the crowd's disbelief at Lu Chen's 10th floor clear boiled over into open astonishment, Balu reflecting quietly on just how far ahead of her he'd pulled since they'd last fought together, and a player named Kuangdao clenching his fists at the realization of just how unbridgeable the gap between them had become. Inside the tower, Lu Chen pressed on without hesitation, the 11th through 19th floors introducing mixed monster formations, ground cavalry, aerial paralysis units, ranged archers, and mechanism statues generating environmental hazards, all of which he simply overpowered through raw superiority. On the 20th floor, a much larger platform and a mounted night boss awaited, its aerial speed and spear attacks initially giving him more trouble than anything before, his early arrow rains mostly missing as it dodged through wind currents. He adapted by baiting it with a voice decoy into a diving attack, whose fixed trajectory let him land a devastating weak point hit on its mount's wing, crippling its flight and letting him finish it off with a follow-up burst before it could recover. The victory brought a hefty reward haul and a level up, after which he continued climbing, floors 21 through 29 escalating with moving platforms, cross-cutting wind walls, edge-pushing monsters, and eventually double-layered floating islands that made simply locating enemies a challenge for ordinary players. Though his enhanced perception and mobility tools let him push through steadily until he reached the 30th floor at 70% condition, confident enough to declare it time to stop holding back. There, the platform split apart into 9 floating stones surrounding a massive swirling wind vortex, and above the clouds, a towering wind-armored guardian appeared, warning him this floor carried a special falling judgment mechanic he'd need to respect. The wind guardian opened by slashing not at Lu Chen but at the platform beneath him, cracking its stability, while the central vortex began pulling him steadily toward its center. He countered with potions and a barrier scroll, only to discover the barrier itself could be sucked in, forcing him to improvise while suppressing the boss with ranged fire and landing a strong weak point hit on its chest core. The Guardian responded by teleporting between platforms unpredictably, and Lu Chen soon noticed a nastier mechanic developing. Every time it lost a chunk of health, the central vortex spat out anchor points that steadily amplified its own pull, tearing platforms away one by one as his kill progress advanced. Realizing too late that the anchors, not the boss, were the true priority, he pivoted to destroying them, but they were scattered too far apart to clear in time, and a knockback strike from the Guardian sent him flying straight toward the vortex's mouth. Only a substitution technique, sacrificing a decoy clone, saved him from instant failure. With the vortex reaching critical mass regardless, the floor's disintegration mechanic triggered fully, tilting and collapsing every remaining platform toward the center. And despite the Guardian still having a meaningful chunk of health left, there was no way to finish it before the whole arena gave way beneath him, pulling him into the vortex and ending his run at floor 29. With 2 prior 10-floor rewards banked, but the 30th left uncleared, and a 2-year lifespan penalty deducted for the failure. Teleported back to the city square, the crowd fell into stunned silence and then explosive discussion once the record refreshed to floor 29, most agreeing that even a first attempt loss to an unfamiliar mechanic was still an extraordinary showing. Balu approached him afterward, needling him gently about even he being capable of losing to a mechanic. He brushed it off as normal for a first run, and when she pressed him about when he planned his second attempt, he answered simply, "Now." The crowd could barely believe it. Night God, going straight back in after failing minutes ago. And he hurried over with his recording board, pressing for the 30th floor's mechanics. Lu Chen almost brushed him off, figuring his current strength put the information out of reach for ordinary players anyway, but decided it wouldn't hurt to share, and the explanation that followed left everyone stunned. He'd failed the first time not because his damage was too low, but because it was too high, accidentally overloading the wind vortex's suction mechanic by killing the boss too fast. The onlookers found the explanation almost offensive in its absurdity. A defeat caused by excess power was not something anyone else there could possibly relate to. And he's carefully taken notes turned out to be useless to anyone but Lu Chen himself. Undeterred, Lu Chen walked back to the tower's entrance and entered for his second weekly attempt, clearing the first floor in an instant with a single sweeping arrow rain and then blazing through the following levels so quickly that the city's leaderboard updates could barely keep up, each refresh landing nearly a third faster than his first run. By the 29th floor, a group of storm archers barely had time to draw their bows before his gear sniped them all down. And after clearing it, he drank a flight-enhancing potion and equipped a feather talisman before stepping straight into the 30th floor rematch, determined to fight smarter this time. The Wind Guardian charged him immediately, but Lu Chen kept his distance from the central vortex rather than trading blows recklessly, absorbing the first strike with a barrier and countering with a paralyzing arrow before the boss summoned its anchor points, the very mechanic that had doomed him before. This time he prioritized destroying the anchors first, watching the vortex's pull visibly weaken each time, and confirmed his theory. Manage the anchors, and killing the boss was only a matter of time. The Guardian responded by charging him aggressively, but Lu Chen dodged with a flash step and countered with a precise hit to its windwheel weak point, cracking its defenses open for the fight ahead. The Guardian retaliated with a horizontal slash that sheared away half the platform Lu Chen had just occupied, a reminder that standing still on this floor meant death regardless of remaining health, and he pressed the assault on the cracked windwheel while managing his resources carefully. The boss then escalated dramatically, summoning waves of anchors that grew larger each time. 6, then 9. Some landing dangerously close to the vortex's mouth itself, forcing Lu Chen into increasingly desperate maneuvers, sprinting against the pull, sacrificing a decoy clone to survive a lethal blade strike, and clearing the anchors under mounting pressure. Destroying them triggered an unexpected windfall, a massive backlash of damage against the boss itself, revealing the floor's true mechanic. The fight wasn't meant to be brute force through raw damage at all, but solved by dismantling the anchor system, letting the boss's own power turn against it. Understanding this, he pushed forward through an even more extreme final wave of 18 anchors, clearing them under intense pressure and landing a devastating combined shot that pierced both the boss and an anchor behind it simultaneously, triggering a final catastrophic backlash that shattered its remaining defenses. A follow-up strike to its exposed core finished the fight for good, and the reward haul that followed was substantial. Experience, points, a treasure chest, a skill book. But what stopped Lu Chen cold was the final drop. A pair of wings, an item so rare that even elite players had never encountered anything like it. The wings themselves left Lu Chen giddy with excitement. An item so rare that even without any stats attached, simply having them would be enough to turn heads across the entire city, and he now possessed an infinite supply. Checking their properties revealed solid agility and movement bonuses along with 2 attached skills, and the moment he equipped them, a pair of silver-white wings unfurled from his back, letting him glide effortlessly the instant he flapped them. A sensation completely different from anything potions had offered before. Reading further, he found one skill had no cooldown at all, and the other only a short one, both of which felt like minor miracles once he considered how devastating they'd be inside the tower's punishing terrain. He then opened the reward chest that had dropped alongside the wings, and to his delight found it packed with enhancement materials clearly meant for the wings themselves, letting him dive straight into upgrading them. As the city's announcement system broadcast his 30th floor clear to the entire population, sparking another wave of disbelief below, Lu Chen calmly worked through enhancement after enhancement using his effectively infinite materials, hitting a milestone at the 5th level that granted wind pressure immunity, and continuing without hesitation all the way to the 10th level, which required rarer components he happened to have from the same treasure chest. The final upgrade transformed the wings dramatically, gilding their edges with faint golden patterns and granting a new high-speed flight capability that left him thoroughly pleased with the outcome. Examining the wings' fully upgraded stats, Lu Chen noted the mana-draining cost of the flight skill with amusement. A real limitation for other players, but meaningless to him given his endless supply of mana potions, meaning he could theoretically sustain the ability indefinitely. Testing it out for the first time sent him rocketing across dozens of meters in an instant, and grinning at how genuinely fast it felt. He pressed on into the 31st floor, where a much narrower, more fragmented battlefield awaited alongside a small army of spear-wielding flying lancers. He evaded their opening charge entirely using his new flight burst, then answered with an arrow rain that shredded through more than a dozen of them at once, weaving through the survivors' retaliatory encirclement with an instant repositioning skill that left their spear thrusts striking empty air. Clearing the floor rewarded him with more wing-related crafting materials, hinting that the tower had shifted its reward focus toward aerial combat gear from this point onward, and he pushed straight into the next floor. Where 50 ranged archers greeted him with a volley of arrows, he simply sidestepped mid-air before answering with his own devastating barrage, clearing them before they could even manage a second volley. Lu Chen tore through the remaining archers and continued climbing at a blistering pace, floor after floor falling in mere minutes as the city's leaderboard refreshed almost continuously, leaving the watching crowd increasingly numb to each new announcement. Deep inside the tower, he encountered a floor built around a central thundercloud core that periodically struck down bolts of lightning indiscriminately, and quickly realized the mechanic worked in his favor. Luring the golem enemies into the lightning's path let their own environment do most of the damage for him, letting him mop up survivors with minimal effort. Clearing that floor pushed him to another level up, and he reflected on just how absurdly generous the tower's experience rewards were compared to ordinary content, understanding now why the weekly limit existed at all. The following floor turned out to be an unusual transition stage, with no monsters at all, just a rapidly collapsing bridge under constant bombardment from lightning and wind hazards. A floor designed to test overall skill rather than raw damage, which for Lu Chen, wings and all, was essentially a freebie he crossed in under a minute. Reaching the 40th floor, he was met by an enormous lightning-wreathed dragon eagle of staggering scale and power, its stats dwarfing everything he'd faced before. And the fight opened immediately with a terrifyingly fast diving charge that carried a field-wide storm effect, forcing him to rely on his new warp skill just to avoid being caught in its wake. The eagle's assault escalated further, darkening the sky and dropping pillars of lightning across the battlefield that steadily shrank his available space, forcing him into increasingly precise dodges as the boss locked onto his position directly, clipping him with residual damage and a brief paralysis before following up with a lethal talon strike he only survived by sacrificing a decoy clone. Repositioning behind the creature, he finally spotted its true weakness. Twin crystal cores at the base of each wing that powered its flight and tracking abilities. And rather than rushing the attack, he methodically laid a web of traps around the arena using his effectively infinite crafting supply, baiting the boss into the kill zone with a voice decoy that mocked it into a reckless dive. The trap network worked exactly as intended, snaring the creature mid-charge long enough for him to land a devastating point-blank strike on the left wing's core, visibly cracking it, and he followed with a barrage that chipped it down further despite the boss breaking free and retaliating with a storm of wind blades he weathered behind a barrier. A second trap charge let him finish off the left core entirely and pivot to the right, using another ambush formation to briefly immobilize the creature and unload a matching barrage that shattered its second core as well, leaving it without its primary combat systems. In desperation, the eagle funneled all its remaining power into an exposed chest core and entered a berserk state, forcing Lu Chen into a single all-or-nothing strike using his strongest arrow enhanced with stored energy, a shot that finally brought the massive creature down for good. But just as he allowed himself a moment to catch his breath, a hidden mechanic triggered a floor-wide punishment effect dealing percentage damage to everything present, catching him completely off guard and forcibly ejecting him from the tower before he could react. Lu Chen reappeared in the city square, still crackling with residual lightning, and the crowd's shock at seeing wings on his back quickly gave way to speculation from Balu, who correctly guessed that he must have cleared the 40th floor guardian only to be blasted out by some hidden follow-up mechanic. Otherwise, there was no explanation for why he hadn't simply pushed into the next floor. Sure enough, the system confirmed exactly that. He'd killed the guardian, but a retribution effect had ended his run anyway and cost him more lifespan, a result that left him irritated despite having plenty of years to spare, mostly because the fight had already pushed him dangerously close to death before the final punishment landed. The rewards that followed were substantial, including new equipment, materials, and a wing skill book for a lightning-based teleport ability that promised huge distance and brief invincibility. Exactly the kind of tool that would have saved him serious trouble against the eagle's lock-on abilities. Unfortunately, the skill required Thunder attribute wings, which his current wind-type wings didn't qualify as, leaving him stuck holding a powerful tool he couldn't yet use. However, a separate rare item, a special voucher tied to the floor's rewards, promised to unlock evolution and enhancement permissions that could potentially solve exactly that problem. And rather than using it immediately, he turned his attention to the currency system the tower had also unlocked for him, opening its exchange shop to see what else might be worth pursuing first. Browsing the shop's offerings, Lu Chen quickly realized its real value lay not in ordinary materials but in permissions, enhancement rights, strengthening directions, and full evolution routes that no ordinary vendor could offer, explaining why the tower's weekly entry limit mattered so much, even for well-equipped players. Among the evolution paths, one stood out immediately: a dual wind and thunder route offering extreme speed, teleportation, and lock-breaking abilities. Priced exactly within his current point budget, and he judged it the clear best choice given what he already had access to through his earned voucher. After weighing his limited points carefully, he committed to purchasing the evolution route alongside an item that expanded his wing's skill capacity, only to discover with delight that the expansion item itself had also become an infinitely available resource in his inventory, meaning skill slots would never again be a constraint for him. With his points nearly spent, but the essential purchases secured, he activated the special voucher to begin the wing evolution process, committing without hesitation despite the substantial success rate risk involved, since failure would only cost him materials rather than progress. As the transformation began, threads of thunder began weaving into the wing's structure alongside their existing wind patterns, and Lu Chen felt a sharp, stinging pain spread along his back as the fusion process took hold. The crowd watched in bewilderment as Lu Chen's wings burst into visible thunder-light moments after he'd emerged from the tower, most assuming at first that he was simply enhancing his gear before realizing the scale of what was happening was something far more significant. An evolution, not a mere upgrade. Balu recognized immediately that he was converting his 40th floor rewards directly into further growth without pause. An efficiency that left even Bai he struggling to find words for how absurd the turnaround speed was. This wasn't simply outperforming other players anymore, it was operating on an entirely different scale of capability. As the evolution progressed toward completion, the wings transformed dramatically, growing to a full 3 meters in span with lightning coursing along each feather, and once finished, their upgraded stats dwarfed the previous version across every category: agility, speed, resistance, and a new ability that let him tear through hostile tracking effects during flight. Satisfied, Lu Chen used his newly acquired expansion stones to max out his wing's skill capacity in one motion, and immediately learned the Thunder Teleport skill he'd been unable to use before, marveling at its range and utility. The crowd's reaction to the transformed wings bordered on hysteria, showering him with a mix of awe, envy, and increasingly ridiculous requests. While a new citywide leaderboard specifically for wing equipment unlocked and instantly placed him in first, prompting Balu to quietly concede that what she was witnessing wasn't just skill anymore, but an entirely different tier of play. Surrounded by an eager crowd begging him to demonstrate flight, Lu Chen obliged, lifting off the ground in a burst of lightning that left onlookers gasping, then testing his high-speed flight ability by crossing the entire square in a blink, appearing on the far side before most players could track his movement. He followed up by testing the Thunder Teleport skill directly, vanishing and reappearing 100 meters away almost instantly. An act that sent the crowd into stunned disbelief and prompted Baihe to grimly reassess strategy against anyone with flight capability, essentially conceding that fighting was no longer viable against such an advantage. Pleased with the results, Lu Chen slipped away to a quiet spot and began sorting through the rewards still sitting in his inventory, opening one of the treasure chests he'd earned and finding among the loot a small voucher that, upon inspection, turned out to convert directly into extra currency for the tower's shop. And to his astonishment, the voucher itself became an infinitely stockable item the moment it entered his bag. Realizing the currency voucher itself had become infinite, Lu Chen burst into gleeful disbelief. The very resource he'd been rationing carefully just an hour earlier was now effectively unlimited, and he began cashing in vouchers rapidly, watching his points balance climb from a few hundred into the tens of thousands before deliberately stopping himself, recognizing he didn't need to hoard endlessly right that moment. Returning to the shop with this newfound wealth, he immediately picked up a new bow suited for aerial combat that synergized well with his evolved wings, along with a training ground pass to hone his flight maneuvers, and rounded things out by purchasing another tier of treasure chest, which promptly produced an even more valuable version of the currency voucher. A discovery that left him laughing at how thoroughly he'd broken the system's economy, with his points once again surging past 200,000 after cashing in a batch of the new vouchers. He decided the currency problem was permanently solved, and turned his attention toward using his newfound resources to upgrade his gear and quietly unsettle the city's market. Lu Chen began enhancing his new bow immediately, watching the success rate steadily drop as the levels climbed, but with his effectively unlimited supply of materials, failure barely registered as a setback, until the higher tiers introduced a risk of losing progress on failure, a complication he sidestepped entirely using protective scrolls that had also dropped from his treasure chests. After enduring several consecutive failures at the highest tier, persistence paid off, transforming the bow with dramatic new stats and a special synergy effect that resonated directly with his evolved wings, boosting his aerial combat fluency further. Satisfied, but recognizing he had no immediate opportunity to test the new setup properly, since the tower was locked for the week and ordinary monsters posed no real challenge, Lu Chen decided instead to have some fun with the city's market, listing his now obsolete original wings and a spare currency voucher up for auction, fully expecting the listings to send the population into another frenzy. The listings detonated across the city's trading interface exactly as expected, with players reacting first in disbelief that wing equipment could even be traded, then in a mad scramble once they realized the implications. Early access to aerial combat capability that no other faction currently possessed. At the White River Alliance's headquarters, he reported the rapidly climbing bid with visible frustration at the sheer gap in wealth this represented, while Balu insisted they had to compete regardless of cost, arguing that securing even Lu Chen's discarded equipment would give their guild a critical head start in aerial content others couldn't yet touch. As the bidding climbed steeply on both listings, Lu Chen watched with quiet satisfaction from his room, more curious about the smaller currency voucher's reception than the wings themselves, and was pleasantly surprised to see it also draw serious competition once players realized what access to the tower's shop system could be worth. When the auction closed, the wings sold to Balu for a substantial sum plus rare materials, unsurprising to him, while the currency voucher fetched an unexpected prize. A rare resurrection item that, once it entered his infinite inventory, effectively granted him an extraordinarily powerful safety net for as long as he remained under the level restriction. Just as he was preparing to head home satisfied with the night's trades, a message notification came through from Baihe. Baihe's message turned out to be a simple dinner invitation, framed as a way to celebrate the near completion of the White River Alliance and unwind despite the game's high stakes. And after a nudge from Balu, who mentioned, teasingly, what she was wearing, Lu Chen agreed to meet them at a barbecue stall on South Street. Arriving to a lively scene of guild members trading war stories, he settled in among Baihe, Taishan, King Feng, and the others, who greeted him with a mix of respect and easy camaraderie, sharing details of their own recent brush with death on a lower-tier regional quest that had nearly cost them lifespan if not for their healer's timely intervention. Their casual joking was interrupted when Balu arrived, dressed in the very outfit Lu Chen had gifted her earlier along with black stockings, drawing a startled, clumsy compliment from him that visibly deflated her expectant smile, leading to a round of teasing barbs between them that entertained the rest of the table thoroughly. Once the group settled back into conversation, he revealed the real reason behind the invitation. His guild had uncovered intelligence pointing to a rare stone rumored to activate a legendary spring of life, hidden deep within a dangerous, storm-racked canyon dungeon northwest of the city, and unfolded a map showing the location in detail. He clarified that the rumored stone lay not in the outer canyon but deep within a sealed raid dungeon at its core, one requiring a full party and coordinated activation of several thunder pillars just to gain entry, and confessed he'd deliberately held off sharing the discovery earlier, assuming Lu Chen's strength made teaming up unnecessary. His original plan had been to clear the dungeon quietly and simply hand the stone over once obtained. When Lu Chen asked about the dungeon's other potential drops, Balu produced an old record describing the canyon's history as a former mining site that once produced a rare material capable of repairing legendary springs of life. And the moment Lu Chen read its description, he understood exactly how valuable it would be for his manor's dormant spirit spring, whose slow revival had been bottlenecked by weaker materials until now. Despite Baihe's insistence that the Alliance handle the dungeon alone and deliver the reward afterward, Lu Chen insisted on joining directly, citing his own urgent need for the material, and the group quickly agreed to depart together the next morning. As the evening wound down into easy conversation and teasing, Balu ribbing him about tagging along as a beneficiary again, an exchange over a skewer of grilled kidneys that left the table in stitches, and a round of questions about his tower runs that he answered with characteristic understatement. The mood settled into genuine camaraderie before the group toasted to their first collaboration. The next morning, Lu Chen's lifespan ticked up again as he headed to the West Gate, where the White River Alliance had already assembled, nerves and banter mixing among the group as they waited. Taishan admitting his anxiety as the party's shield-bearer, King Ning offering quiet reassurance about healing support, and Balu standing silently at the front until Lu Chen's arrival cleared a path through the gathered crowd. Once he joined the party, Baihe took charge as leader, and the group set off toward the distant, storm-wrapped canyon. cutting through dangerous but manageable terrain where Lu Chen hung back initially. Content to watch by, he directed the team's coordination rather than intervening himself. As they reached the canyon's outer edge, a pack of lightning-touched wolves ambushed them, and while the team handled the fight competently using standard tank and support tactics, one wolf broke off toward the vulnerable healer in the back line, only for Lu Chen to drop it with a single precise shot before it could land a hit. A display that left the party newly energized, despite the underwhelming experience share he personally received given the dungeon's low level. Pushing deeper, the group encountered progressively tougher, thunder-corrupted monsters that nonetheless posed no real threat to Lu Chen. While the rest of the party benefited enormously from the dungeon's generous experience yield, several members closing in on their next level. After roughly half an hour of steady progress, they reached the canyon's depths and finally sighted the storm-shrouded entrance to the abandoned mine that was their true destination. The system prompt had barely finished flashing. A Black Wind Thunder Valley key detected, the team dungeon entrance responding. At least 5 players needed to activate the Laming Stone pillars simultaneously. When Taishan grinned and said it was coming, he took a breath and laid out the plan they'd agreed on the night before. Taishan, King Feng, Windblade, Xiao Dao, and Kingning would each take a pillar. Shi and Beilu would hold the middle for healing and command, and Night God would roam and support. Lu Chen looked over the 5 Laming Stone pillars and didn't like what he saw. Black wind swirling around them, thunder flickering across the ground, and warned the others to be careful, sensing that monsters were likely to spawn the moment the mechanism triggered. No sooner had he said it than the 5 took their positions and pressed the pillars. The activation counted upward, 1%, 2, 3, and then the pillars shook violently together as pairs of crimson eyes lit up all through the black wind surrounding the mine. The Laming Guard had woken, and the system warned them to hold all 5 pillars. If even 2 failed, the dungeon would never open. Taishan cursed as the monsters came walking out of the wind wrapped in lightning. Laming Mine Slaves, level 20 fine monsters with 6,500 GP, 360 physical attack, 160 physical defense, 120 magical defense, wielding Thunder Pickaxe, Heavy Strike, and Mine Slave Charge, each worth 45000 exp with a Mechanism Guard bonus of 300%. And they weren't alone. It was a whole group of them. He shouted for calm, ordering everyone to hold their pillars no matter what, since any interruption would ruin the whole activation. Taishan raised his shield just as a Mine Slave slammed its Thunder Pickaxe into him for 318 damage, and Kingning and he both rushed to heal him while Balu threw up a shield to cover him. Across the field, King Feng found himself facing 2 Mine Slaves at once, and being an assassin built for burst damage rather than holding a line, he started to buckle. Right as one of the monsters raised its weapon to smash his pillar, an arrow came screaming out of nowhere and punched clean through its arm for 8,420 damage, stopping it just long enough for King Feng to drive his dagger into its neck and shout his thanks. Lu Chen said nothing. He simply swept his eyes across the battlefield, judged all these monsters as trash, drew his bow, and called out Storm Arrow Rain. A storm of arrows crashing down over the center of the mine and pinning Mine Slaves to the ground one after another. Hits of 9,880, 10220, and a critical strike of 21860. An entire wave wiped out in a single AO sweep. The system confirmed the kills, 45000 exp each, 271 exp distributed to each player, and dropped a Laming Pickaxe fragment of fine grade, its count in the inventory now reading infinite. The whole White River Alliance froze. One moment the field had been thick with monsters, the next it was empty, and everyone silently wondered if this was really just Night God's ordinary AO. Taishan, still gripping his shield, admitted the boss's damage numbers made him go numb every time he saw them, and Beilu told him gently to stop daydreaming and keep defending the pillar, which snapped him back to attention. The activation ticked on, 67, 68, 69%. Just as everyone began to believe the worst was over, a low roar rolled out from the depths of the mine cave. Out of the black wind came something far larger. A Laming Mine Slave standing nearly 3 meters tall, dragging a massive Thunder Pickaxe that threw sparks as it scraped across the ground. It was a level 22 rare elite, the Laming Mine Slave Captain, with 28000 HP, 620 physical attack, 260 physical defense, 180 magical defense, commanding Heavy Thunder Sweep, Mine Slave Command, and Pillar Breaking Strike, worth 18000x with the same 300% Mechanism Guard bonus. Baihe's face changed the moment she recognized what it was. Rather than attacking the players, the captain charged straight at the nearest stone pillar, casting Pillar Breaking Strike, a hit that would cut the pillar's activation progress by 30% if it landed. Bai, he screamed for someone to stop it and called on Night God, and in the same breath, Lu Chen's bowstring twanged, and the arrow on it simply vanished from sight. An instant later, a blood-colored thunderbolt tore through the Laming Mind slave captain's chest, leaving only a small wound at first, until the blood shadow around it exploded in a burst of wind and thunder for 68472 damage, a weakness critical hit that emptied its full health bar in a single stroke. The system announced the kill. 180,000 exp, 315 exp distributed to each player, and a pile of materials dropped. Though Lu Chen barely glanced at them, since gear from level 20-something monsters meant nothing to him anymore. The only thing that still mattered to him was the Earth Vein Thunder Spring Stone. Everyone exchanged stunned looks, and it was Tai Shan who finally broke the silence with a simple awesome. The pillar counters kept climbing, 70, 71, 72%. And with the captain dead, the surrounding mind slaves seemed to lose whatever coordination they'd had, their movements turning sluggish and confused. Lu Chen looked around at everyone standing frozen and told them not to just stand there, to keep defending the pillars. And Bai, he snapped out of it first, echoing the order, while Tai Shan nodded and confirmed he understood. Over the next few minutes, wave after wave of Laming Mind slaves kept rushing out of the black wind, and mixed among them were 2 level 21 Laming Mind slave overseers, though none of them ever got close enough to swing a pickaxe before Lu Chen mowed them down with storm arrow rain, and the party pulled in another huge pile of experience for it. Tianxin watched his bar climb and joked that he felt like he was leeching off a big shot, which King Ning agreed with bluntly, and when he asked half seriously if he could apply to leech even more, Bai, he just told him to finish clearing the dungeon first. Lu Chen ignored their banter entirely, his attention on his system panel, where a prompt informed him his soul-hunting layers had reached 10,000 and asked if he wanted to convert them into a permanent weak point damage bonus. He didn't hesitate, converting the full stack for a permanent 10% increase, bringing his total bonus to 12%, and privately celebrated the jump in his damage. Just then he called out that the pillar activation had reached 90%, warning everyone to stay alert for the final stretch. And right on cue, the ground cracked open with black-blue lightning as 3 massive figures stepped out of the black wind. 2 more Laming Mind slave captains, rare elites like before, and a level 23 Laming Mind slave commander, a rare minor boss. The system warned that if any 2 pillars were interrupted during this final phase, the whole activation would fail. Before he could even react, Lu Chen was already airborne. His 9 Heavens Thunderwings spread wide as he used Thunderwing Flash to appear behind one of the captains and put a Shadow Strike arrow straight through the gap at the back of its neck for an instant kill. Without pausing, he folded his wings, arced through the air, and hit the second captain with a soul-hunting burst arrow before its pickaxe could even fall, dropping it in a single hit. Less than 3 seconds had passed since the elites appeared, and the party hadn't even had time to assign positions. Xiao Dao and King Feng could only stare in disbelief. The last enemy, the commander, sensed the danger and turned to lock onto Lu Chen in midair with a skill called Heavy Thunder Traction, sending lightning chains to try to drag him down. But the special effect of his thunder wings shattered most of the pull before it could take hold. Steady in the air, Lu Chen located the commander's chest as its weak point and loosed a soul-hunting judgment arrow that tore through its ore armor for a massive critical hit, killing it instantly and rewarding the party with a huge burst of experience. With all 3 elites wiped out, the 5 stone pillars lit up together, black-blue lightning surging into the sky to form a barrier, and the system announced that the Black Wind Thunder Valley dungeon was officially open. At nightmare difficulty, the whole team fell silent at the news. Titian looked at the words dungeon difficulty, nightmare glowing in front of him and couldn't help twitching his mouth, complaining that they'd only just opened the door. How was it already a nightmare? King Feng glanced at Lu Chen and suggested quietly that maybe the problem wasn't the dungeon at all, and Windblade agreed it was probably a problem with someone in the party, while King Ning murmured that night God had likely been flagged as an abnormal unit by the system. Lu Chen said nothing, and Beilu couldn't help laughing. He didn't bother explaining himself. More monsters meant more experience and faster soul-hunting stacks, and more importantly, nightmare difficulty meant a higher chance of finding the Earth Vein Thunder Spring Stone, which was his real reason for coming. He simply told everyone to move in and stop wasting time. He took a breath and assigned positions. Tishan up front, King Feng and Xiao Dao scouting the flanks, King Ning and Balu on healing, Windblade holding crowd control. And when she got to Lu Chen, she hesitated before simply saying, "Night God, do your thing," which struck the others as an oddly vague order, even though nothing about it was technically wrong. As the group entered Black Wind Thunder Valley, the system laid out the dungeon's true objective: shutting down the Thunder Pollution Core, with a bonus objective to find a missing mining team, and a note that nightmare difficulty boosted the quality of the final clearance chest. Before they'd gone far, a group of Laming Mine slaves and their overseers rushed out of the tunnel, and Lu Chen responded by deploying his Mist Shadow Hunting domain, slowing the enemy's perception and movement, then wiping the whole group out with 1,000 shadows consecutive shot before they could close the distance, earning a huge chunk of experience and materials. Tishan, watching the corpses pile up, joked that he felt like a moving decoration, and when Qingning comforted him by saying he could still help pick things up, he admitted it would have hurt less if she'd said nothing at all. The group pushed deeper, and as more waves of mine slaves, overseers, thunderhounds, and black windbats spawned, Lu Chen dealt with them casually, dropping induction traps to chain enemies in place, then finishing them with storm arrow rain. 10 minutes later, they reached a massive underground mine pit centered on a broken thunder spring, spewing black-blue thunder mist, with charred miner corpses hanging in chains nearby. Standing beside the well was a 5-meter-tall boss, the Black Wind Thunder Mine Master, a rare boss with 180,000 GP, formed from a mutated guardian that had devoured the thunder spring. He turned solemn at the sight, and Tishan tightened his grip on his shield at the sheer size of the health pool, though Lu Chen just smiled privately, thinking of far larger health totals he'd faced before. The boss noticed Lu Chen and immediately cast Mind Slave Revival, waking dozens of the hanging corpses as thunder-transformed slaves, and Tishan's scalp crawled at the number of them. Before he could even finish offering to handle the mobs, Lu Chen had already deployed his domain and thrown out his soul-locking hunting cage array, chaining the newly revived slaves in place instantly. He then took to the air and prepared a soul-hunting judgment arrow. The boss threw up a 50,000 point shield in response, but Lu Chen's shot punched straight through it and still landed a critical hit that dropped more than half of its total health in one strike, leaving He and Tishan stunned at how close it had come to dying from a single arrow. Enraged, the boss slammed the ground to trigger Thunder Spring Surge, sending Thunder Slurry after Lu Chen, but his Thunder Wings tore through most of it, letting him flash to the boss's side and finish it with a soul-hunting burst arrow that detonated its exposed core and triggered an aerial combo, finally killing it and dropping the long-awaited Earth Vein Thunder Spring Stone along with other rare materials. Lu Chen was satisfied. His real goal for the trip was complete, but then the ground shook violently. He panicked, wondering if there was some hidden mechanic, and Balu threw up group protection while Lu Chen tore open barrier scrolls. The boss's corpse began twitching and then burst apart entirely, revealing a massive new beast, wolf-like and lizard-like, covered in black-blue scales and thunder crystal spikes, rising up from the wreckage. The creature that emerged was the Black Wind Thunder Beast, an excellent grade boss with 520,000 GP, the final pollution core of the whole valley, born from devouring the power of the Earth Vein Thunder Spring itself. Taishan and the others were left completely dumbfounded at the sheer scale of it. Something on this level could wipe out an entire elite team of current Blackstone City players. He, pale with fear, asked Lu Chen if he had confidence, and Lu Chen answered simply that it was just a monster, and they'd kill it and be done. He knew better than to argue, though privately she thought it wasn't so simple for anyone but him, and quickly ordered all the DPS to fall back while she, Qingning, and Balu focused entirely on buffing Lu Chen, since he alone would have to carry the fight. As the beast reared up and began charging its Thunder Annihilation Cannon, Lu Chen took to the air with his Thunder Wings and deployed his Mist Shadow Hunting domain, dulling the beast's senses just enough. He spotted 2 weak points: its throat, where the cannon was charging, and its chest, the core sustaining its power, and decided to hit both. His first arrow tore into its throat, interrupting the cannon attack and dropping a huge chunk of its health, but the beast retaliated with Thunder Crystal Thorns, a damage reflection skill that sent a bolt of thunder back along his arrow's path. Lu Chen dodged using Thunder Wing Flash, letting the reflected bolt slam into the mine wall instead, then reappeared above the beast and unleashed 1,000 shadows consecutive shot, cracking open the crystal on its chest and cutting its health nearly in half in just a few seconds, a pace that left He breathless and Windblade openly stunned, while Taishan finally understood why Lu Chen valued his wings so much for aerial combat. Enraged, the beast slammed the ground to unleash Thunderpool Rampage, flooding the air with Thunder Slurry to try to seal off Lu Chen's escape routes, but he pushed straight through the gaps using his wings' special traits and, combined with his Mist Shadow domain blinding the boss further, appeared directly above it and fired a soul-hunting judgment arrow straight into the crack on its chest. An enormous critical hit that shattered its core entirely and emptied its remaining health, with his soul-hunting mark's permanent weak point bonus adding to the damage. The beast collapsed into the ruined thunder pool, and the system confirmed the kill, along with a full dungeon clear at nightmare difficulty with an SS evaluation, rewarding a nightmare clear chest, a first clear bonus, another earth vein, thunder spring stone at excellent grade, a thunder beast heart core, and a skill book called Thunder Prison Arrow Rain, all of which pleased Lu Chen greatly. After Bai, he chose to leave the dungeon. The group was teleported back to the entrance of Black Wind Canyon, where Taishan discovered with shock that he'd jumped a full level, from 19 to 20, and the rest of the party. King Feng, Zhao Dao, King Ning found they'd leveled up too, with Windblade remarking on just how exaggerated Team Dungeon experience could be. Taishan joked that his new level felt like he'd been carried the whole way, making King Ning laugh, while Bai He walked over and thanked Lu Chen sincerely, admitting that without him they wouldn't have even survived defending the pillars, let alone gotten a nightmare first clear. Taishan agreed, recalling how certain he'd been they were finished when the three elites appeared. And Windblade admitted with a bitter smile that his only real contribution had been reading system prompts, while King Ning said she'd barely gotten to heal at all. Balu joked that their real contribution had just been filling out the headcount needed to activate the pillars, which, in truth, was accurate, since the pillars needed 5 people regardless. Lu Chen, uninterested in the sentiment, simply told Bai he'd be heading out, and she understood immediately, promising to notify him of any future news and asking him to keep an eye out for special dungeon keys, though he told her not to bother him for anything ordinary. With that, he used a town portal scroll and vanished from the canyon entrance, leaving Bai He to sigh and lead the rest of the group back. Back in Blackstone City, Lu Chen immediately spread his thunder wings and flew toward Moon Shadow Manor, determined to use his newly acquired materials to restore the manor's lifespan spirit spring. With some distance still to cover, he decided to open a few of his nightmare clear treasure chests along the way, pulling out a thunder roar ore armor, some black wind thunder crystals, and thunder resistance potions. Solid gear, but nothing he personally needed, since the armor would suit a shield warrior like Titian far better than himself, and the rest of the materials were too low grade to be worth using. He set the chest aside, and instead pulled out the Thunder Prison Arrow Rain skill book, learning it immediately and discovering it was indeed an AO skill, dealing multi-stage range damage with a chance to inflict paralysis, and improving further with locked or slowed targets. He fed the book into the skill repeatedly, pushing it quickly from level 1 all the way to its cap at level 10, at which point it gained Wind Thunder resonance effects, paralysis, armor break, and brief lock effects, with reduced mana cost and cooldown. A solid addition to his arsenal for handling elite groups or large dungeons in the future. Arriving back at the manor, his thunder wings folding as he landed, Lu Chen was greeted by Aina along with Leah, Misha, Vale, and Nora. Aina reported that the medicine fields and barrier were stable, but the spirit spring vein in the back lake remained dried up, and while the dried spirit spring stones they'd previously invested had kept it from withering further, actually reviving it would take a very long time at that rate. Lu Chen then revealed the earth vein thunder spring stone he'd obtained, and Aina's breath caught. She recognized it immediately as an extremely rare material capable of repairing damaged earth veins, though she warned that a single piece likely wouldn't be enough. Lu Chen simply smiled and pulled out an entire pile of them instead, throwing down 10, then 20, then 50, then a full 1,000 stones onto the lawn, leaving Aina and the maids utterly speechless at the sheer excess. When he asked if it was enough, Aina, struggling to find words, admitted it was more than enough. Completely overflowing, in fact. The maids each took 100 stones and began feeding them into the spring, and with each one, the restoration percentage climbed rapidly. Far faster than any material they'd used before, since typical lifespan resources only raised it by 1 to 3%, while these Thunder Spring stones jumped it by roughly 8% each time. Within minutes, the restoration reached 100%, and the group watched as life returned to the previously barren lakebed, withered aquatic plants sprouting fresh shoots once more. Leah and Misha marveled at the sight, and Aina declared with excitement that the spirit spring had truly come back to life. Lu Chen, satisfied, reflected that now all that remained was tending to the spirit peach pits daily alongside the spring's nourishment, and before long he'd become the first person to produce unlimited lifespan-type fruits. A thought that thrilled him despite any daily usage limits on such fruits. He put the manor's care fully in Aina's hands and prepared to head out, But before he could leave, Aina mentioned that someone from the Hunter Association had come by that morning, asking that he visit as soon as possible regarding an important matter. Lu Chen, intrigued, told Aina to keep managing things at the manor and immediately took off toward the Hunter Association. Lu Chen soon arrived at the Hunter Association, his thunder wings folding as the two guards at the entrance greeted him respectfully, informing him that both the president and Selena were already waiting for him, which told Lu Chen there must be another quest involved. Inside, the hall was livelier than he'd ever seen it, filled with both players and powerful hunter NPCs, and the guard beside him agreed it was the busiest he'd ever witnessed the association become. On the third floor, Grayson and Selena were waiting. Grayson looked over Lu Chen's thunder wings and bowed before remarking on how much his strength had grown, and Lu Chen brushed it off modestly. Selena added that he'd already reached the 40th floor of the Tower to Heaven and cleared the sunken ancient forest solo, feats she herself had gone to test the difficulty of and found extremely high. Lu Chen wasn't surprised. NPCs in this world had a degree of freedom nearly indistinguishable from players. Getting to the point, Selena explained that the soul-hunting aura around him had grown dense enough that he was just a step from his second-class advancement. And Grayson confirmed this meant Lu Chen had triggered the conditions early. Normally, players only reach this stage at level 35, but Lu Chen's Blood Shadow Hunter class already far exceeded the norm for a first advancement class. Still, he couldn't advance immediately. He'd first need to complete a prerequisite quest to earn a permit, only unlockable for actual advancement once he hit level 35. Selena then revealed 3 possible advancement routes on a glowing hunter slate. Blood Shadow Adjudicator, focused on single-target burst and ideal for instant kills on elites or players. Mist Shadow Hunting King, focused on domain suppression and group assassination, ideal for large dungeons and complex terrain. And Forbidden Soul Hunter, centered on long-term soul hunting growth and weak point judgment, with an extremely high ceiling but also extremely high risk, since failure could damage his class mark entirely. Grayson recommended the first as the safest, stable option suited to Lu Chen's burst playstyle, while Selena noted the second suited his already strong domain skill. When she reached the third, her tone grew heavier, explaining that it wasn't even normally offered to first advancement classes, since it touched on forbidden hunter systems and pushed his growth in a much deeper, rule-based direction. Lu Chen considered all 3, but he already knew. His true strength wasn't in burst skills alone, but in growing stronger the more he killed, and the soul hunting mark's permanent weak point bonus was central to that. He chose the third route without hesitation. Selena asked if he was sure, warning that its prerequisite quest would be far more dangerous than the other 2. But Lu Chen insisted, reasoning that there was no point choosing a lower ceiling when a higher one was available, especially given how many life-saving abilities he already had. Selena sighed, admitting she'd known he wouldn't pick the safe option. The system confirmed his choice and opened the prerequisite quest. Soul Hunting Permit, requiring him to travel to the outskirts of the soul-breaking hunting ground and hunt 3 forbidden aura-contaminated creatures to collect 3 soul-breaking hunting marks, in exchange for the Forbidden Soul Hunter class advancement permit. Grayson explained that the hunting ground was a special area sealed off by the association after a forbidden soul hunter died there, contaminating the location with a rule that could reverse mark ordinary hunters who entered, meaning inside, one might be the hunter or the prey. Lu Chen accepted the warning calmly, and Selena handed him a special token allowing entry, pointing him north of Blackstone City towards Soul-Breaking Valley, telling him to return to her once he'd finished. With that, Lu Chen left the Hunter Association. After Lu Chen left, Selena's brow only furrowed deeper. She turned to Grayson and asked what they should do now, and Grayson admitted there wasn't much choice. Since Lu Chen had chosen the Forbidden Soul Hunter path himself, he'd have to walk it alone. But Selena clarified she wasn't talking about that path at all. She meant the sunken ancient forest. It was a real problem. The night before, Grayson had received a report from the Blackstone City Guard. Even though Lu Chen had already dealt with the Deer Mother and the forest should no longer pose any threat, patrols had found the black fog inside had grown even denser than before, with signs of unusual monster activity along the periphery. Sightings of thunder-patterned deer, black vine wolves, and rot-vine giant bears that shouldn't normally appear together, leading the guard to suspect a brewing beast tide. The room grew tense at the implication. If a true beast tide formed so close to Blackstone City, it would become a citywide disaster, dragging in every faction. The Warriors Guild, Mages, Association, Pharmacists Guild, City Guard, and players alike. Just then, a system-wide commission appeared inside the Hunter Association, a joint reconnaissance mission to investigate the anomaly at the sunken ancient forest. Visible only to players and NPCs already affiliated with city associations, with a bonus objective to disrupt any beast-tide precursors before they escalated. The lobby buzzed with excitement as hunters and players who joined the association received the notification, remarking on how rare and exclusive this kind of advance commission was. Selena, still tense, asked if the members present would even be enough, and Grayson admitted they wouldn't be alone. Members from other associations would join in as well. He then told Selena firmly not to tell Lu Chen about this for now, reasoning it was better to wait until after his second-class advancement was complete, since his output would only grow stronger afterward. Selena agreed. And as Grayson turned to leave, she called after him, telling him to be careful and stay safe, which he acknowledged simply before heading out. Meanwhile, Lu Chen arrived at the entrance to a quiet valley littered with beast bones, with a layer of black-red mist deep within. He used his soul-breaking hunting token to enter the outskirts of the soul-breaking hunting ground, appearing in a gray-black landscape of sparse trees and dried bloodstains, with distant beast roars echoing through the air. His quest tracker showed 0 of 3 seals collected, and he figured it wouldn't be too difficult. Deploying his mist shadow hunting domain, he immediately caught several hidden auras nearby, remarking dryly that hiding wouldn't help them. His first target, a gray deer with black-red bone blade antlers, a level 31 soul-breaking deer shadow, charged at him with a locked-on strike, but Lu Chen used Shadow Hunter Flash Step to appear behind it, located the weakness at the back of its neck, and finished it in 2 hits with a soul-hunting judgment arrow followed by a soul-hunting burst arrow, earning his first seal along with a good haul of experience and materials. Continuing on, a black wolf claw lunged at him from the shadows, a level 32 shadow-devouring hunting wolf, but he dodged using Thunderwing Flash and, after the wolf reappeared behind him with surprising speed, used Thunder Prison Arrow Rain to paralyze it before finishing it off with a soul-hunting burst arrow, securing his second seal. Deeper still, he found a headless hunter corpse kneeling with a broken bow, which rose up and fired invisible arrows at him. A level 33 headless hunter with a genuinely dangerous kit, including a shadowless arrow attack that nearly caught him off guard. After trading blows in the air using 1,000 shadows consecutive shot to crack open its chest and expose a hunting seal, Lu Chen finished it with a devastating soul-hunting judgment arrow. As it disintegrated, it warned him cryptically not to go deeper, since the hunters inside weren't dead yet. A statement that left Lu Chen puzzled. With his third seal in hand, the prerequisite quest was complete, though he found himself just short of leveling up, so he pushed on to grind a bit more, clearing groups of soul-breaking hounds and blood shadow bats with Thunder Prison Arrow Rain and Mist Shadow Arrow Rain until he finally leveled up to 31, putting all 5 free attribute points into agility as always. Satisfied with his progress, he left the hunting ground and used a town portal scroll to return to Blackstone City. Back in Blackstone City, Lu Chen headed straight for the Hunter Association, greeted respectfully by the guard at the entrance, who confirmed Selena was present. Oddly, the association felt emptier than usual. Nearly everyone who'd been there before seemed to have left on missions, which Lu Chen simply shrugged off before heading up to hand in his prerequisite quest. On the 3rd floor, Selena sat alone, reviewing a report with furrowed brows, and looked up in visible surprise at his return. Lu Chen wasted no time, placing 3 soul-breaking hunter seals on the table and announcing the mission complete. Selena was quietly stunned at how fast it had gone, given that most ordinary hunters would struggle to even return alive from the periphery of that hunting ground. Yet Lu Chen spoke of it as though it had been nothing more than a casual outing. She picked up the seals, and the system confirmed the prerequisite quest was finished, granting him the Forbidden Soul Hunter class change permit, though it noted he was still 4 levels short of the official advancement unlock at level 35. Lu Chen wasn't too concerned, though he acknowledged that grinding those 4 levels normally would take considerable time, and asked Selena if there was a faster method. She seemed to have anticipated the question, handing him a black business card bearing a single name: Morton. She explained that this Morton, a wandering merchant found occasionally in the West Market, held a special entry pass to a place called the Myriad Phenomena Experience Paradise, a location specifically for farming experience. She warned, though, that Morton was notoriously elusive and might not even agree to sell the pass even if found, having only run into him herself some time before. Lu Chen thanked her and set off immediately for the West Market, a much rougher, more chaotic area than the main street, filled with stalls, wandering merchants, and players shouting over goods. He scanned the crowd without spotting Morton at first, but wasn't worried, knowing wandering merchants like him showed up by chance rather than schedule. Eventually, he came across a small, unassuming stall in a corner. A damaged pocket watch, an unlabeled potion, a silver admission ticket, and a handful of strange black pebbles laid out before a dozing, mustached merchant in a gray robe. The sign read, Morton's sundries, and Lu Chen grinned at his own luck. Morton woke and eyed him, asking bluntly who'd told him about the pass. And when Lu Chen brushed off the question, Morton picked up the silver ticket, warning that it was expensive and out of reach for ordinary people. He set the price at 3,000 gold coins, or an excellence-grade material, or some other special resource that caught his interest. A price that drew scoffs and disbelief from nearby players, who couldn't understand paying so much for something that gave only experience with no gear or materials. Morton ignored them entirely, focused only on Lu Chen, who instead pulled out a lifespan crystal. The moment its golden glow appeared, Morton's entire demeanor shifted. He sat up straight, recognizing its rarity immediately, and agreed the trade more than covered the price. He handed over the ticket without further negotiation, and the system confirmed Lu Chen had obtained the Myriad Phenomena Experience Paradise Entry Pass, usable once per week and infinite in quantity, meaning he wouldn't need to purchase it again going forward. Morton pointed him to a small teleportation array behind the stall, explaining he'd automatically be ejected 2 hours after entering, though leaving early was also an option. Lu Chen thanked him and left, stepping onto the array and using the pass to vanish in a flash of white light. When Lu Chen opened his eyes again, he found himself on a huge circular platform with no terrain around it, just a crystal floating at its center. The system informed him he'd entered the Myriad Phenomena Experience Paradise, that his stay would last 2 hours, and that killing the myriad phantom beasts here would grant massive experience but no equipment or materials. Simple and brutal, exactly what he needed. He drew his bow, determined not to waste a second of the time limit. Immediately, several light gates opened around the platform, releasing a mixed group of stone-armored rhinos, fire-feather crows, iron-armed apes, and wine-blade mantises, all around level 31 to 32. Lu Chen decided to prioritize the airborne fire-feather crows first, spreading his thunder wings and rising into the air just as the rhinos charged and the crows dove, dodging both while their attacks scorched the empty platform below. From mid-air, he deployed Mist Shadow Hunting Domain, stunning the ground-based enemies momentarily, then unleashed his strongest AO, Thunder Prison Arrow Rain, prioritizing the crows and paralyzing several mid-dives so they plummeted uselessly to the ground. He followed with Thousand Shadows consecutive shot against the iron-armed apes, clearing the first wave entirely within moments and pulling in a huge burst of experience along with soul-hunting stat gains. Lu Chen didn't slow down, joking to himself that with monsters spawning infinitely and his inventory items likewise unlimited, the whole point was simply relentless confrontation. Throwing skill after skill without pause, behaving more like a mage than an archer, a style that would have baffled any onlooker. The next wave brought mechanical puppets, wooden armored warriors, steel blade puppets, blazing flame mechanism orbs, and iron-winged mechanism birds, which spread out to attack from multiple angles simultaneously, clearly trying to force him to move and disrupt his rhythm. He held his ground regardless, using Crystal Eye Lock to identify their cores and detonating the blazing flame orbs mid-approach with Thousand Shadows consecutive shot, the resulting explosions stunning several steel blade puppets. He followed with Thunder Prison Arrow Rain, though one puppet powered through the arrows and closed in with its twin blades. Lu Chen used Shadow Hunter Flash Step to appear behind it and finished it with a point-blank soul-hunting burst arrow, the explosion catching the remaining puppets in its blast radius and clearing the entire wave. A dozen minutes later, he leveled up to 32, putting all 5 points into agility as always. The third wave arrived shortly after. Thunder-patterned Trents, ice crystal snakes, lava giant lizards, and stormhawks, along with floating elemental orbs, turning the platform's edge into a full elemental battlefield of thunder, ice, lava, and wind. The Stormhawks took off first, the Lava Monitor lizards spat flames across the ground, and the Thunder Vein Trents rooted themselves to spread thunder vines beneath Lu Chen's feet. Though none of these monsters were particularly high level, their crowd control and area skills made standing still to fight impossible. So he switched entirely to aerial combat, opening with Mist, Shadow Arrow Rain, and finishing the Hawks with Thousand Shadows consecutive shot. The lizards, relying on their scorching carapace, tried to charge through the arrow rain, so Lu Chen laid thunder induction traps to entangle their limbs, then finished them with a devastating soul-hunting burst arrow to the jaw, the remainder cleaned up by Thunder Prison Arrow Rain. Clearing this wave pushed his experience bar deep into the back half of level 32, and the crystal at the platform's center suddenly flared red, spawning enemies continuously rather than in discrete waves. Blade-armed demon apes, sandstorm puppets, thunderhawks, poison vine demons, and stone-bone giants all pouring in, with Lu Chen fighting entirely from the air throughout, chaining skills seamlessly. Half an hour later, he leveled up again to 33. putting his points into agility as always, and with over an hour of time remaining, he felt confident he'd reach level 35 by the end. Then the central crystal shook once more, opening 3 larger gates simultaneously. This time releasing genuine elite monsters, all level 34 rare elites. The Golden Armored Warbear with 260,000 HP, the Thunder Crow King with 220,000 GP, and the Stone Demon General with 300,000 GP. Each launching a different attack from a different direction, the instant Lu Chen entered combat. He prioritized the aerial Thunder Crow King first, using Thunder Wing Flash to dodge its Thunder Feather volley and appear at its side. Then hitting the base of its wings with Thousand Shadows consecutive shot to cripple its flight, following with a soul-hunting burst arrow that sent it crashing to the ground dead. Turning next to the Golden Armored Warbear, which slammed the ground with heavy palm earth-shattering. An attack that mostly missed since Lu Chen remained airborne. He located the weak point at the back of its neck and struck with a soul-hunting judgment arrow, triggering his shadow blood mark for massive damage. When the bear activated its berserk body protection to survive, he finished it with a second soul-hunting burst arrow that shattered its golden armor entirely. Finally, facing the heavily defended Stone Demon General, Lu Chen chose not to fight it head-on, instead landing to throw a thunder induction trap that entangled its legs, then tossed a vocal mimicry decoy to distract it before finishing it with a critical weakness hit that ended the fight. With all 3 rare elites down, his experience surged again, pushing him to level 34, and with only 1 level remaining and 40 minutes left on the clock, he felt confident. More than 40 minutes later, the final level up arrived, level 35. And the system immediately confirmed his official second advancement quest had unlocked, instructing him to return to the Hunter Association and find Selina. Satisfied, Lu Chen checked his panel, confirming his class as Blood Shadow Hunter with the Forbidden Soul Hunter route now unlocked and ready, and prepared to leave the Myriad Phenomena Experience Paradise. Lu Chen chose to leave, and white light enveloped him instantly, returning him to the small teleportation array behind the Western Market. Outside, a commotion had already broken out. The level leaderboard had refreshed, showing Night God at level 35, and players were in disbelief. Recalling he'd been in his 30s just recently, and questioning how anyone could jump so many levels in a single stretch without it being some kind of exploit. The leaderboard now showed him a full 14 levels ahead of the second-place player, and given how much harder leveling became at higher tiers, the gap stunned everyone watching. Rumors spread quickly that he'd been seen heading to the West Market, buying something from an old man's stall. Some claiming it was from a place called Iron Pot Stew, others correcting that it was actually Morton, and a crowd immediately surged toward the market to track him down. Certain that anyone capable of granting such a leap in levels had to be something special. Morton, previously relaxed behind his stall, quickly found himself surrounded by a mob of desperate players demanding to know if he still had passes to sell and offering gold, rare materials, equipment fragments, and increasingly absurd bargains. One man even jokingly offering to mortgage his wife, which drew an angry retort from a nearby female player. Morton, overwhelmed and unable to get a word in, realized he might not be leaving anytime soon. Lu Chen, watching the chaos unfold, laughed to himself, wondering idly whether this wandering merchant might end up becoming a permanent fixture given the sudden fame, before deciding not to linger and taking off toward the Hunter Association. Back at the association, the guard at the door nearly saluted out of habit before catching himself, staring in surprise at Lu Chen's new level. Selina, still on the 3rd floor, looked up as he entered, and was visibly stunned when she registered his level, asking incredulously if he'd really found Morton so fast. Lu Chen shrugged it off as luck, claiming he'd simply happened to run into the merchant and leveled up along the way, though Selina privately marveled at just how absurd he was. Raising 4 levels in one sitting was far beyond what any normal player could manage, even with the same opportunity. She congratulated him anyway, and Lu Chen asked whether he could now begin the official second advancement quest. Turning serious, she confirmed he could. And the system opened the official second advancement quest, entering the soul hunting trial ground to complete 3 forbidden hunting trials, a solo-only challenge that would grant the forbidden soul hunter class upon completion. Selina warned him not to celebrate too soon, reminding him that this trial's danger far exceeded even the sunken ancient forest, with a mortality rate reportedly over 90%. Lu Chen wasn't worried, confident in his life-saving tools and high fault tolerance. Selina handed him the trial guiding stone, admitting there was nothing more she could tell him now that his path was chosen, and instructed him to place it into the altar at the old soul-hunting wasteland northwest of the city to open the trial. She wished him luck, hoping he wouldn't disappoint her after so long without seeing a forbidden soul hunter appear, and Lu Chen left without another word. Arriving at the desolate wasteland, far bleaker even than the soul-broken valley, Lu Chen found a dilapidated altar with a groove waiting for the stone. Placing it inside triggered a blood-red glow, and the trial activated instantly, pulling his vision to black. When it returned, he stood in a sealed hunting ground with 3 stone doors and no way back. Advancement or death, nothing in between. As he processed this, the first door slowly opened, revealing a level 35 faceless hunter trial projection with 420,000 GP. And before Lu Chen could even move to attack, it had already fired an arrow straight toward his forehead, catching him off guard with its speed. Lu Chen sidestepped the arrow just in time, feeling it graze his cheek before it blasted a crater into the wall behind him, and he noted grimly that the damage was nearly on par with his own burst arrow. Recovering, he tried to use Crystal Eye Lock to find the faceless hunter's weakness, but the attempt failed entirely, blocked by a shielding effect. The first time he'd ever failed to locate a weak point, and he admitted grudgingly that the enemy had some real skill. The hunter fired again, 3 arrows converging from different angles, forcing Lu Chen to use Shadow Hunter Flash Step to escape behind it and mark it with Shadow Bloodmark. But the hunter split into 3 afterimages in response. He destroyed one with an arrow, but the remaining 2 fired back, one hitting his barrier and the second grazing his shoulder for real damage. Deciding not to waste more time, he deployed Mist Shadow Hunting Domain to slow all 3 afterimages, then unleashed Thousand Shadows consecutive shot, shattering an afterimage and clipping the true body as well, which loosened the shielding effect on its weak point. Seizing the opening, he used Thunder Wing Flash to appear above the hunter and fired Thunder Prison Arrow Rain, freezing it in place and finally revealing its true weakness, the chest, which he then hit with successive soul-hunting burst and judgment arrows, the second landing a massive critical hit that shattered the first stone gate for good. Lu Chen drank a health potion to refill his bar, noting this had only been the first trial and that the enemy's attacks always seemed to strike first. The second gate opened next, releasing a black, slender-limbed monster covered entirely in staring eyes. A mysterious trial projection with 560,000 HP, whose weakness lock ability immediately marked multiple points across his body at once, unnervingly efficient. It vanished and reappeared behind him almost instantly, forcing him to dodge with Shadow Hunter Flash Step, though its tail still caught his legs for real damage, further empowering its next strike. As it sprouted bone wings and gave chase into the air, Lu Chen used a floating hunting net to entangle half its wings and threw it off balance, then tried Crystal Eye Lock again, only to find the weakness was, absurdly, its right eye, an instruction he found laughably useless given how many eyes it had. Frustrated, he decided to simply cover it entirely with Thunder, Prison, Arrow, Rain, cracking apart eye after eye, then followed with Thousand Shadows consecutive shot to weaken its overall gaze effect. Enraged, the beast forced its way through the Arrow Rain and lunged at his heart with its claws. Its remaining eyes had somehow prejudged his flash step direction, and it was already waiting at his landing spot. But his blood shadow substitution triggered automatically, sacrificing a blood clone to save him. He retreated briefly, then resumed his assault with Shadow, Bloodmark, and a soul-hunting burst arrow that dropped the beast's health to its final sliver. It even spoke, threatening to gouge out his eyes, which only made Lu Chen more determined to finish it. A soul-hunting judgment arrow through its head finally destroyed it entirely, shattering the second gate. Catching his breath and drinking more potions, Lu Chen admitted to himself that any normal player without his level of life-saving tools would have been slaughtered here. The third gate then opened, revealing something eerily familiar. A shadow that looked almost exactly like himself, bow in hand, with the same incomplete blood wings on its back. The system identified it as a level 37 Blood Shadow Soul Hunter, a trial afterimage with 720,000 HP and the exact same skill set Lu Chen himself possessed. Blood Shadow Substitution, Soul Hunting Judgment Arrow, Shadow Bloodmark, Soul Hunting Backlash, and Forbidden Arrow. Lu Chen narrowed his eyes, recognizing this as some kind of preview of his own future class's power, and remarked wryly that the trial was clearly designed to show him firsthand just how overpowered his own path could become. Lu Chen studied his opponent, muttering that this Blood Shadow Soul Hunter was clearly just a stronger version of himself. The afterimage opened with Shadow Bloodmark, and Lu Chen mirrored the move instantly, the 2 blood-colored marks colliding mid-air before both fired soul-hunting judgment arrows simultaneously, the resulting explosion knocking them both back. Before Lu Chen could steady himself, the afterimage vanished again, reappearing behind him with startling speed. He dodged its center mass, but the arrow still grazed his shoulder, triggering Shadow Bloodmark and dealing real, substantial damage that shocked him with how much it actually hurt when used against him rather than by him. He drank a potion to recover, but the afterimage gave him no room to breathe, firing arrow after arrow at his vital points. He blocked one with Wind Guardian, though the shield took heavy damage, and retaliated with Thunder Prison Arrow Rain, which the afterimage mostly dodged using its own flash step, though the brief lock effect still caught it. He followed up with Thousand Shadows, Consecutive Shot, and the two hunters traded volleys of arrows that shattered against each other in midair, though enough of his shots broke through to land solid hits, triggering Wind Thunder Resonance and an aerial combo, followed by a soul-hunting burst arrow that landed a critical hit, only for the afterimage's own Blood Shadow substitution to sacrifice a clone and block the crucial damage, which Lu Chen found disgustingly efficient, especially since it was clearly using the skill offensively rather than defensively. While Lu Chen was still adjusting to this, the afterimage circled to his side and fired a soul-hunting judgment arrow before he could evade with Thunderwing Flash. A soul-hunting backlash effect from his own earlier hit locked him in place for a critical fraction of a second, letting the arrow reach him. He used Mirror Shadow Substitute to block it, though the resulting blast still grazed him, leaving him half impressed and half alarmed at how thoroughly the enemy mirrored his own kit. Recovering quickly, he threw out a vocal mimicry decoy as bait. The afterimage saw through it easily and mocked him by imitating his voice, unaware that the decoy was merely cover for the real plan. A hidden thunder induction trap and poison spike mechanism, which caught the afterimage as it circled to his flank, applying corrosive poison that slowed its movement and healing. Lu Chen followed with Mist Shadow Hunting Domain to further blind and slow it, deliberately withholding his ultimate since the enemy still had Blood Shadow substitution in reserve. Instead, he hit a Shadow Strike arrow inside a barrage of Mist Shadow Arrow Rain, landing it cleanly on the afterimage's shoulder blade for solid damage. Another Blood Shadow substitution triggered to block the follow-up, prompting Lu Chen to change tactics entirely. Rather than targeting the true body, he blanketed the space between it and its blood clone with Storm Arrow Rain, trapping it in place, then moved in for what he believed would be the finishing blow with Soul-Hunting Burst Arrow, confident the enemy's Judgment Arrow was on cooldown and it had no way to resist. But before he could finish his taunt, the afterimage began channeling something new. His stomach dropped as he realized it still had an ultimate move in reserve, and the bow in its hands turned dark red as blood shadows across the entire trial ground converged toward the arrow, Forbidden Arrow. Lu Chen tried to create distance with Thunderwing Flash, but the arrow was too fast, striking him directly in the chest and emptying his health bar instantly through a combination of detonated Shadow Bloodmark, Soul-Hunting Backlash, and Weakness Lock damage stacking together. Only his low-level Resurrection Amulet saved him, negating the death and restoring a portion of his health after a brief delay. The moment he revived, he immediately threw out poison spikes and thunder traps, then took to the air and unleashed Thunder Prison Arrow Rain to stiffen the afterimage, following with Mist Shadow Hunting Domain and Thousand Shadows Consecutive Shot to weaken it further. When it tried to channel Forbidden Arrow again, Lu Chen refused to let it finish, interrupting the cast with a concussive arrow to the wrist before delivering the final blow. A soul-hunting judgment arrow that triggered a cascade of additional effects, including the soul-hunting mark bonus, Arrow Shadow Addition, Shadow Bloodmark damage, and a secondary core detonation, completely emptying its health bar. As it dissolved, it looked up at him and spoke one last time, calling him a good partner and telling him he'd eventually carve out a path of blood in the Myriad Realms Colosseum, before vanishing entirely as the third stone gate shattered and the whole trial ground began to shake. The third stone gate shattered completely, sending countless blood-colored fragments floating into the air before they surged into Lu Chen's body, guided by some unseen force, as the system confirmed he'd killed the Trial Phantom and completed the third and final trial. The Forbidden Soul Hunter Second Awakening trials were finished, and final settlement was underway. Lu Chen stood silently at the center of the grounds as the fragments were fully absorbed, and moments later the system declared the trial evaluation perfect, congratulating him on completing his Second Awakening. His class had officially changed from Blood Shadow Hunter to Forbidden Soul Hunter. A wave of terrifying new power erupted from within him as his class panel unfolded before his eyes, describing the Forbidden Soul Hunter as a hunter who walked between shadows, weaknesses, and taboos. No longer simply hunting monsters, but hunting the flaws of life, the rifts of rules, and the weaknesses of any creature's soul, with traits boosting his weakness judgment, advancing his soul-hunting mark, adding extra suppression against elite and boss-tier enemies, and increasing final damage across all soul-hunting skills. Lu Chen read the class description with growing excitement, reflecting that ordinary archers shot arrows, Blood Shadow Hunters shot marks, but a Forbidden Soul Hunter shot pure weakness itself, an entirely different concept taken to its logical extreme. The system continued listing his rewards: increased health growth, increased critical hit growth, increased weakness, critical correction, a higher soul hunting proficiency cap, and a substantial batch of stat points, free attribute points, skill points, and 50 years of added lifespan. He also received the class-exclusive Forbidden Arrow skill book, which he immediately recognized as the very skill the boss Afterimage had used against him moments earlier. A skill whose danger he now understood firsthand, along with a unique, uncopyable class transfer treasure chest. Reading the Forbidden Arrow's description, he learned it condensed the power of his soul-hunting marks, shadow blood marks, weakness locking, and domain suppression into a single devastating arrow, with a 60-minute cooldown and a note that the arrow cares not about level, only about weaknesses. A phrase that struck him as both poetic and terrifying in its implications, since it implied a kind of absolute equality among all targets regardless of raw power. He learned the skill immediately, and fed it duplicate copies to rapidly raise its level from 1 all the way to its cap at level 10, at which point it gained an execution-style bonus against targets below 10% health and saw its cooldown drop dramatically from 60 minutes to 20. An enormous improvement that left him thoroughly pleased with the outcome. Turning to the unique treasure chest, he opened it to find 2 additional exclusive skill books, Soul Hunting Vision and Soul Hunting Judgment, both forbidden grade. Along with 2 special items, a prototype forbidden artifact called the Taboo Soul Hunting Core, and a forbidden artifact grade weakness reconstruction scroll, all of which entered his inventory in infinite quantities except for the uncopyable core. Pleased with the haul, he began learning Soul Hunting Vision first, maxing its proficiency the same way he had with his other new skills, quickly pushing it from level 1 all the way up to its cap at level 10, eager to see exactly what the fully leveled skill would offer him. Lu Chen looked over his new Soul Hunting Vision skill with satisfaction. On the surface, it added no damage at all, but its real value went far beyond raw numbers. Since without seeing weaknesses, Forbidden Arrow was just an ordinary burst, while with weaknesses revealed, it became an outright execution. This skill was the core of his entire class. He moved on to learn Soul Hunting Judgment next, maxing it out immediately and finding its effect delightfully brutal. The more marks stacked on a target, the higher the judgment damage, further amplified by severe injury, armor break, bleeding, imprisonment, slowdown, or low health, with a mere 45-second cooldown that even refunded partially on a kill. Lu Chen couldn't help laughing at how absurd it was, calling it less a judgment and more a direct roll call. Still not satisfied, he checked his 2 remaining exclusive items, the Taboo Soul Hunting Core, which recorded his soul hunting marks and boosted all related skill damage, capable of growing further once activated by killing an excellence grade or higher unit at or above his own level, and the Weakness Reconstruction Scroll, which could forcibly expose a target's true weakness for 5 seconds, unusable again on the same target shortly after. Looking over these combined tools, Soul Hunting Vision to spot weaknesses, the Reconstruction Scroll to force them open, Soul Hunting Judgment to reckon all stacked marks, and Forbidden Arrow to condense everything into a single devastating shot. Lu Chen grinned from ear to ear, thoroughly convinced this class was simply unreasonable. He then allocated his 100 free attribute points entirely into agility, feeling the surge of speed wash over him, and dismissed his skill points as pointless since he had plenty of skill books to raise proficiency directly instead. The system informed him the trial had ended, and he'd be leaving in 10 seconds. Moments later, he reappeared on the 3rd floor of the Hunter Association, intending to find Selena about new quests and activate his dormant soul hunting core. But just as he reached for the door, the sound of alarm bells rang out and the entire city shook. Rushing downstairs, he found Selena hurrying over, her expression grave. She paused in surprise at seeing him already back, then, recovering, marveled that he'd actually succeeded in completing his class change to Forbidden Soul Hunter. Lu Chen brushed off the near failure and asked what had caused the alarm. Selena's expression darkened further as she explained that trouble had erupted at the sunken ancient forest. A massive number of monsters were pouring out from its depths, the black fog spreading too fast, and the first outpost had already gone silent. When Lu Chen asked if this was a monster tide, Selena confirmed it, adding that the mix of monster types was far too varied to be natural, as if something were driving them all toward Blackstone City together. Lu Chen wondered aloud if the Deer Mother had somehow returned to orchestrate this, but Selena, her frown deepening, said the bigger problem right now was Grayson. Lu Chen was startled, asking if something had happened to Grayson, and Selena explained that after Lu Chen had entered his trial, Grayson had personally led a team from the Hunter Association, along with members from several other associations, to investigate the black fog anomaly at the sunken ancient forest. Meant only as a perimeter check, but a beast tide had erupted from deep within, cutting off their retreat. To cover the others' escape, Grayson had stayed behind alone at the old outpost, and Selena warned that if they delayed even another hour, he might not make it out once the beast tide fully surrounded the place. Immediately, a system prompt triggered an emergency rescue quest. Head to the old outpost and save the trapped Grayson, which Lu Chen accepted without hesitation. When he asked where the outpost was, Selena explained it lay northwest of the forest, once used to monitor the depths but now unreachable by normal routes due to the spreading fog. Lu Chen told her to lead the way, and when she asked in surprise if he really meant to go right now, he shot back that waiting for the tide to bury Grayson first wasn't an option. She agreed, and as they started running, Lu Chen scooped her up in a princess carry to fly faster, brushing off her flustered protests about propriety, and the two launched into the sky together on his thunder wings. At the same moment, a system-wide announcement rang across Blackstone City. The beast tide had officially erupted, and a main city defense quest had opened, calling on players to help the city guards hold the outer defense line in exchange for experience, reputation, and military merit points exchangeable for gear and materials. The city exploded into chaos and debate, with many players rushing eagerly toward the defense line, confident that between the city guards and the various association elites, the city couldn't possibly fall. Among those hurrying to the wall were Bei, He, Balu, and Taishan, with Taishan visibly unsettled at the sheer size of the approaching horde. While Bai, he reminded everyone to hold back and let the city guards lead, since their levels weren't high enough to do more than assist. Below the wall, city guards formed tight shield lines, mages began condensing spells atop the ramparts, and Hunter Association archers knocked their bows, giving many onlooking players a false sense of security, until the first wave finally broke from the black fog. Black vine wolves, rot-toothed wild boars, thunder-patterned deer, and poison fog scorpions surging forward in overwhelming numbers, with black-feathered demon crows swooping from above. Ranged players scrambled to respond, but the sheer volume meant fallen monsters were instantly replaced by more climbing over their corpses, and the defense line strained badly. One shield guard was sent flying by a boar's charge, prompting panicked calls to hold formation and fall back behind the guards. Bai, he urged caution over greed for kills, while Taishan gritted his teeth on the front line, wondering aloud where Lu Chen had gone. Balu, looking toward the forest, spotted a distant bolt of thunder crossing the defense line and vanishing deeper into the fog, murmuring that he must have gone somewhere even more dangerous. A realization that unsettled everyone present, given how much pressure they already felt just defending the perimeter. Within the black fog, a streak of lightning cut across the sky as Lu Chen carried Selena, who sat stiffly in his arms, clearly unused to being held this way. She complained about his hands wandering, and he retorted dryly that with monsters below them, he needed a firm grip or he'd have to dive down and fish her out if she fell. She flushed and grumbled that he didn't need to hold quite so tightly since his hand underneath was already sweating, to which he simply denied it wasn't his sweat at all, leaving her flustered and quietly muttering that he was annoying. He ignored her further and pressed on, admitting privately he wouldn't have bothered bringing her along if he could find the outpost himself. She soon pointed out a misty spot below, the old outpost, and Lu Chen noted the sheer density of monsters surging toward Blackstone City exceeded even her expectations, though he pressed forward regardless, determined to reach Grayson. Suddenly a flock of flying monsters burst from the fog. Black-feathered demon crows, blood-eyed vultures, and a corrupted winged bat. And Selena urged him to circle around to avoid them, but Lu Chen refused, activating soul-hunting vision to instantly reveal every weak point among them. Wing, bones, throats, hearts. He tucked Selena between his legs for stability and unleashed 1,000 shadows, consecutive shot, instantly killing the leading crows before they even closed the distance. The kills piling up rapidly as Selena watched in silent astonishment at the sheer damage output of his post-advancement power. Afterward, she complained about the undignified position he'd left her in, and he promised with a smile to be more mindful of her facial direction next time, which she insisted didn't make it any less awkward. They pressed on, the fog thickening and trees twisting the deeper they went, with Lu Chen noting through his still-active soul-hunting vision that beneath the black fog, chaotic black veins like root systems converged toward the outpost, something clearly lurking underneath. Before Selena could react to this revelation, the sounds of battle erupted ahead, and Lu Chen's wings surged with speed as the two broke through the fog to find a dilapidated outpost surrounded by monsters. Black vine wolves, poison mist scorpions, ghost-faced ape beasts, swamp giant pythons, and several bone-spiked deer guards, all rare or superior elites. Inside a fading barrier, over a dozen wounded hunters and association members huddled, with Grayson at the front, visibly injured but still fighting. Selena cried out for him, and Grayson, startled to see them arrive, immediately warned them away, citing the presence of superior-grade monsters. Right as a massive poison mist scorpion king whipped its stinger toward Lu Chen in midair. Lu Chen, calm as ever, spotted its venom sac weakness through soul-hunting vision and fired a soul-hunting judgment straight through it, the resulting explosion tearing away over half its health in a single devastating hit that left everyone watching stunned. Inside the outpost, the trapped hunters watched with disbelief as Lu Chen's single arrow nearly killed an exceptional elite outright, muttering among themselves that he'd become even more absurd than before. Grayson himself was taken aback, recognizing that the shot hadn't just dealt raw damage but had struck the Scorpion King's most dangerous point, its tail venom sac. A target most hunters wouldn't dare risk, striking directly for fear of triggering a retaliatory venom strike if they missed. Yet Lu Chen had committed to it without hesitation. Selena rushed toward Grayson, finding him standing behind the barrier with a deep shoulder wound and torn armor, warning them not to approach because something lay beneath the outpost. Lu Chen already suspected as much, having glimpsed the black veins underground earlier through his vision. But there was no time to discuss it yet, since the Scorpion King wasn't finished. It entered a berserk state, its speed and venom output surging, and Lu Chen's vision revealed its venom sac had shifted to a new weak point in its abdominal core. Delighted at the chance to test a new tool, he pulled out a weakness reconstruction scroll as the scorpion charged, forcing its true weakness into the open with a glowing dot on its abdomen. He told Selena to fall back, then took to the air as the scorpion lunged into empty space and crashed into a stone pillar, giving him the opening to mark it with shadow bloodmark and follow with a soul-hunting burst arrow that split its carapace wide open. With only seconds of exposure remaining, Lu Chen drew his bow fully, feeling the weight of stacked effects. Reconstruction, shadow mark, soul-hunting mark, taboo suppression, converging into his next shot. He released Forbidden Arrow, and the blood-golden bolt tore through the fog and detonated inside the scorpion's exposed core before the venom mist inside could even spread, killing the exceptional elite outright and dropping a massive haul of experience, equipment, and materials. Lu Chen barely reacted to the loot, his attention fixed instead on the still-dormant soul-hunting core, curious how it would finally activate. And moments later, the system confirmed the kill had met its activation condition. The taboo soul-hunting core came online, unlocking permanent enhancements to all soul-hunting skill damage and a mark recording function that would scale his power endlessly as his soul-hunting marks accumulated. Satisfied with the analysis, he turned to the survivors, and after a long pause, Grayson finally asked if he'd truly completed his second advancement. Lu Chen confirmed it casually, as though it were nothing, leaving Grayson quietly stunned that someone freshly advanced could already outclass him so completely. Lu Chen didn't dwell on it, since the fight wasn't over. The surrounding monsters, further enraged by the Scorpion King's death, kept battering the failing barrier. Grayson warned that the next assault was already beginning, and the shield wouldn't hold much longer, pointing out corrupted vine giant bears slamming against it while ghost-faced ape beasts hurled rocks and crows circled for a finishing dive. Selena urged clearing the monsters first, but Lu Chen calmly noted there was no need for that much effort since they'd conveniently clustered together. Activating soul-hunting vision across all 113 nearby targets, he lit up every weak point simultaneously and unleashed Thunder Prison Arrow Rain, wiping out wave after wave of wolves, boars, and ape beasts in a single strike, the loot notifications flooding in as the trapped hunters watched in stunned silence at the instant field clear. When someone called out that a few corrupted vine giant bears and armor-splitting rhinos remained, Lu Chen dispatched them just as easily with a rapid combination of soul-hunting judgment, soul-hunting burst arrow, and Thousand Shadows consecutive shot, clearing a wide perimeter around the outpost in moments. With the immediate threat handled, Lu Chen landed before the barrier and asked Grayson to finally explain how they'd ended up trapped. Grayson explained that the group had only come to investigate the fog anomaly, but discovered vast pollution root systems spreading underground toward Blackstone City like living things. They'd planned to retreat and report back, but another patrol got caught in the fog, including low-tier hunters and apprentices who couldn't survive alone. So Grayson stayed behind to cover their retreat while the wounded escaped, only for the beast tide to erupt faster than expected and cut off his own path out. Selena, noting his shoulder wound, understood immediately that he'd sacrificed his own escape to protect the others. Just then, the ground shook violently again, and stone bricks in the outpost's corner buckled upward. The fifth such tremor, prompting fearful murmurs about whether it would ever end. Lu Chen, using his lingering vision, identified the cause as the tree roots beneath the outpost shifting, which Grayson corrected wasn't tree roots at all, but what he called the source of pollution, explaining that killing the mother deer earlier had inadvertently fed nutrients to an awakening pollution node beneath the ground, which now drove monsters to attack the city in order to harvest more corpses as fuel. Lu Chen realized with a start that he'd misunderstood the entire situation from the start. The mother deer had merely been an ordinary boss, while the true threat was this hidden root system all along. When one of the sheltering association members asked whether destroying the source could stop the tide, Grayson admitted that doing so would only halt further spread, not undo what had already been unleashed. Just then, Selena shouted a warning as a thick black root burst from the ground, lunging straight for the chest of the member who'd just spoken. Just as the root was about to pierce through the association member's chest, an arrow cut through the air and shattered at mid-strike, the corrosive juice hissing where it splashed. The shaken member collapsed with relief, checking his remaining lifespan and thanking Lu Chen for the timely save. But almost immediately, the outpost floor split open again, this time releasing dozens of times more roots than before, wrapping toward the wounded and association members from every crack, wall, and broken beam simultaneously. Grayson forced himself upright to fire arrows and sever the closest threats. Selena joined in as well, but the roots kept multiplying faster than they could clear. Lu Chen activated soul-hunting vision across all 47 targets at once and unleashed 1,000 shadows consecutive shot, instantly shattering every root that had breached the outpost in a matter of seconds, leaving the survivors staring in disbelief at how effortlessly he'd cleared the threat. Grayson, watching him with a complicated expression, admitted that standing beside Lu Chen made him feel like he was showing off meager skills before a true expert. A statement Lu Chen agreed with far too readily, drawing exasperated silence from both Grayson and Selena. The ground shook again almost immediately, more roots lashing out, and one member urged that they needed to find a way to deal with the underlying source directly rather than keep fighting the symptoms. At that moment, the system confirmed completion of the Grayson rescue quest, delivering a substantial reward of experience, reputation, and contribution. Lu Chen joked wryly about the system's timing before a new follow-up quest immediately triggered. Investigate and destroy the awakening pollution node beneath the outpost. He accepted without hesitation. Grayson proposed that the two of them head down together to deal with the source, and Selena insisted on joining as well, but Lu Chen firmly refused both of them, reasoning that someone needed to look after the wounded and guard the entrance, and that too many people underground would only get in each other's way in the cramped space. Both fell silent at the blunt logic, unable to argue, and Grayson eventually agreed to guard the entrance while Selena tended the wounded, with both promising to back him up if anything went wrong. Selena told him to be careful, and Lu Chen brushed it off with a confident wave before walking alone toward the central crack at the outpost center. As soon as Lu Chen landed underground, he felt a sticky membrane of black-red root tissue beneath his feet, the surrounding walls thick with slowly writhing root fibers, all of them dotted with weaknesses under his soul-hunting vision. The moment he spoke, dozens of root fibers whipped toward him, blocking every path of retreat, but he didn't back away. Instead, firing rapidly to shatter each one at its node, though new fibers kept regenerating from deeper within the walls. Recognizing the endless regeneration meant he needed to find the source, he dropped a thunder induction trap to handle whatever followed and pushed forward at full speed, throwing nearly 100 traps along the way. Eventually, he reached a corner where he heard something like a giant heartbeat, and slowing down, found an underground hollow containing a massive black-red root heart the size of a room. Countless fibers radiating from it into the surrounding rock, black mist pulsing outward with every beat. A crack split open on its surface, revealing a dark red eye, and a hoarse voice addressed him directly as Descender, inviting him to join the black mist in exchange for infinite lifespan, framing lifespan as merely an admission ticket to something greater, becoming the sharpest arrow before the arrival of something it called the Royal Court. Lu Chen laughed off the offer, noting he wasn't exactly short on lifespan either, and the root heart, sensing his refusal, called it the stupidest decision of his life for rejecting evolution. Lu Chen simply drew his bow in response, and under soul-hunting vision, false weaknesses lit up all across the heart's surface. Outer membrane, root connections, mist vents, while the true weakness stayed hidden deep inside. He used a weakness reconstruction scroll to forcibly expose the black seed at its core, and the root heart, startled that he could see it at all, unleashed all its fibers in a coordinated assault from every direction. Lu Chen countered with his soul-locking hunting cage array to pin down a large portion of the assault, then cleared the rest with Thunder Prison Arrow Rain, ignoring the Root Heart's boasts that it would simply regenerate endlessly as long as the underground system remained. Instead, he methodically severed its main roots one by one, slowing its regeneration significantly and drawing furious threats that the royal court would remember him and hunt him through all its black mist seeds. Undeterred, Lu Chen charged a forbidden arrow, and even as the Root Heart tried desperately to bargain, offering secrets about something buried beneath Blackstone City itself, he released the shot straight into its exposed seed, shattering it entirely and reducing the whole root system to ash as the black mist tore apart around him. The heart's last fading words warned that the royal court would find him, that he'd already been marked. Words that left Lu Chen quietly uneasy, despite feeling the matter was, for now, closed. The system confirmed the pollution node's destruction, ending the beast tide's source and granting a massive reward along with a new treasure chest and a level up to 36, which he immediately poured into agility as always, before flying back up to rejoin Selena and Grayson at the outpost. Lu Chen confirmed the job was done, and Selena let out a breath of relief while Grayson looked toward the central fissure, noting that the black fog pouring out had thinned considerably and the roots on the walls were withering away. The pollution source really had been destroyed, meaning the beast tide shouldn't continue spreading, leaving only the monsters already loose to clear before the wave could be considered fully repelled. Grayson arranged for the mobile wounded to retreat immediately, while Selena led those who couldn't walk, and turned to say that he and Lu Chen needed to head straight for the outer defense line to deal with the remaining siege. Lu Chen, impatient with the idea of traveling together, told Grayson to go back with Selena instead and leave the city's defense to him, cutting off further discussion before launching himself into the sky as a streak of thunder toward Blackstone City. At the outskirts, the battle had reached a fever pitch. Though the pollution source was gone, the sheer number of monsters already loose kept battering the defense line relentlessly, with players reduced to simply holding on. Taishan struggled to block a boar's charge and was knocked back hard, prompting Balu to rush in with healing, while Bai he urged restraint, reminding everyone that the high-level NPCs were the true backbone of the defense and players could only assist. Even so, the arrival of several rare elites and a superior-grade black-horned rock armor rhinoceros nearly broke the line entirely. Its charge smashed clean through the city guard's shield formation, opening a gap that let a flood of wolves and boars pour through, sending the player ranks into panicked retreat. Just as the rhinoceros prepared a second charge, a bolt of thunder streaked down from the sky, and the crowd erupted in recognition. Night God had returned. Lu Chen surveyed the chaos below, activated soul-hunting vision across the entire battlefield, and unleashed Thunder Prison Arrow Rain, instantly wiping out the monsters that had breached the gap in a single wave, allowing the city guard commander to reseal the formation while stunned players marveled at the sheer scale of the clear. Turning his attention to the rampaging rhinoceros, Lu Chen calmly located its weaknesses and dispatched it in 3 precise shots. Soul-hunting Judgment to interrupt its charge, Soul-hunting Burst Arrow to shatter its skull, and a final Soul-hunting Judgment Arrow through its neck to finish it, leaving the battlefield momentarily silent at how effortlessly a superior elite had been reduced to nothing. Lu Chen kept up his onslaught without pause, throwing skill after skill indiscriminately across the battlefield, his output so overwhelming that Bai he could only watch in silence, while Taishan marveled that he'd barely managed to block a single boar himself, only for one wave of Lu Chen's arrow rain to clear an entire section of monsters outright. Balu noted with a complicated look that the power gap between them was only growing wider. A dozen minutes later, the battlefield finally fell silent as the last swamp python collapsed under Lu Chen's arrow, marking the end of the beast tide. Players along the wall stared blankly, murmuring in disbelief that it was over, with most crediting Lu Chen alone for clearing the majority of the most dangerous elites and flying threats. The city guard commander let out a long breath, privately acknowledging that without Night God, holding the line would have been far harder, if not impossible. Lu Chen descended slowly, checking his experience bar, which had filled again between the outpost quest and the tide's clearing, and soon leveled up to 37, dumping his points into agility as usual, and reflecting that despite the steep experience requirements after his second advancement, the sheer scale of this beast tide had kept his growth on pace. A citywide announcement soon confirmed the beast tide repelled and the defense quest completed, unveiling a contribution leaderboard that placed Lu Chen first with a staggering 73.6% share. Ahead of the city guard commander, the Mages Association's Elite Corp, and the Hunter Association's Archer Squad, with the White River Alliance managing a respectable 8th place among player factions. The reveal sent the city into an uproar, with players stunned that a single individual had claimed nearly 3/4 of the total contribution, dwarfing even the strongest NPC forces. Bai He, staring at the leaderboard, reflected that 8th place was genuinely impressive for their guild, but the sheer gap between first and everyone else made it hard to feel proud, prompting Taishan to ask why he couldn't feel happy about it. To which Bai He flatly replied that first place simply wasn't human, a sentiment the rest of the guild silently agreed with. Lu Chen, for his part, took the number in stride, considering it a fair reflection of his role in both destroying the pollution source and reinforcing the defense line. The system confirmed his individual rewards: a huge experience boost, reputation, merit points, and an epic grade main city defense contribution chest in infinite quantity, delighting him further. The city guard commander then approached to formally thank him on behalf of the city, revealing that the city lord's estate wished to see him and that battle merit exchanges would soon open with priority given to top contributors. When Lu Chen casually said he'd visit whenever convenient, both Grayson and Selena were left stunned that anyone would treat an invitation from the city lord's estate so lightly. Lu Chen returned to the Hunter Association, where Grayson had arranged him a private lounge, and immediately opened his backpack to examine the 2 infinite quantity treasure chests he'd earned. Delighted at the prospect of opening them without limit, he started with the contamination node purification chest, pulling out purification crystals, root fragments, potion recipes, and a blueprint for a purification arrow quiver module. His first real introduction to the concept of equipment modules, which he learned only unlocked additional slots through consuming scarce module stones, a system that meant nothing to him given his infinite resources. He kept opening chests, learning a purification arrow skill that specifically countered black fog and contamination-type enemies, and continued pulling in dozens more purification-themed materials, blueprints, and potions before setting the chest's contents aside as generally useful but not urgent. Turning to the main city defense contribution chest, he immediately struck module stones among the rewards, along with city defense-themed equipment, skill books for shield guards and mages, and further module blueprints. Realizing with growing excitement that since his materials, blueprints, and module stones were all infinite, any modules he crafted from them might well inherit that same infinite quantity once they entered his inventory. Eager to test the theory, he packed everything away and left the room, running into Selena in the corridor, who asked where he was headed now. He explained he wanted to find the Hunter Association's module forging workshop, and she led him there, warning along the way that forging second-turn equipment modules burned through materials fast and had a real failure rate. Advice Lu Chen brushed off with total confidence given his resources. At the workshop, a gruff blacksmith named Barak, absorbed in polishing a crossbow mechanism, asked flatly whether they'd brought enough materials, clearly expecting to turn away time wasters. Lu Chen simply laid out an enormous pile of rare loot on the counter: poison gland cores, purification crystals, root fragments, rhino horns, mithril, rune stones, and module stones. And Barak's hammer froze mid-swing at the sight, slowly looking up at Lu Chen in disbelief and asking if he'd emptied out the entire sunken ancient forest by himself. Lu Chen smiled and admitted, more or less, and Barak's mouth twitched at how casually he described a literal mountain of premium materials scattered across the floor, the kind of haul any ordinary hunter would treasure a single piece of. Selena, standing behind him, looked even more stunned, mouth agape. Barake took a steadying breath and asked what module he wanted to forge, but Lu Chen instead pulled out his Skyhunter bow, wanting to recast his equipment first to fully unlock his class potential. Barak examined the bow, noting its strong aerial combat foundation but admitting it couldn't fully express Lu Chen's current class abilities, and agreed to reforge it into something better suited to his second awakening path, listing the needed materials: root core fragments, rune stones, mithril, purification crystals, and Lu Chen's own soul-hunting aura. Lu Chen accepted the risk without hesitation despite Barak's warning that failure would waste everything, and the forging began. Materials melted and merged in the furnace while Lu Chen channeled his soul-hunting power directly into the bow, causing blood-golden patterns to spread across its surface. Barak marveled at the class's adaptability, and moments later the recast succeeded, transforming the weapon into the forbidden soul-hunting bow, a significant upgrade in attack, agility, critical rate, and weakness damage, complete with special effects boosting soul-hunting skill speed and defense penetration on weak point hits. Satisfied but not finished, Lu Chen decided to recast his entire 8-piece Mist Shadowhunter suit as well, brushing off Barak's warning that a full-set recasting risked shattering everything if it failed, since he had infinite backup sets anyway, though he kept that reasoning to himself. Barak, now resigned to the sheer scale of Lu Chen's resources, proceeded to melt down the full +10 excellent grade set, and an hour later successfully recast it into the taboo soul-hunting 8-piece set, gaining enhanced base stats plus powerful new set bonuses tied to weakness damage, soul-hunting mark speed, displacement-triggered tears, and a full taboo soul-hunting battle state at 8 pieces. Lu Chen equipped the set immediately, feeling his whole aura shift. And when Barak offered to modify his head equipment as well, he agreed to a simple adaptation rather than a full recast, resulting in the Black Crystal Hunter crown gaining a boost to Soul Hunting Vision's weakness detection speed along with resistance to mental interference. An effect Lu Chen was especially pleased with. With the core gear settled, he turned his attention next to reinforcement and opening the equipment's module slots. Lu Chen reinforced the Forbidden Soul Hunting bow straight to +10 without hesitation, then did the same for the entire 8-piece set, pulling every item back up to maximum enhancement within minutes. Selena, watching from the side, had run out of things to say. Where other players agonized over every reinforcement attempt for fear of wasting materials, Lu Chen simply maxed everything out without a flicker of concern. Barak, watching the continuous stream of successful reinforcements, finally admitted that Lu Chen truly wasn't afraid of any cost, to which Lu Chen simply asked what cost even meant to him, leaving both Barak and Selena at a loss for words. With reinforcement done, he turned to the module slots. Each piece of recast equipment started with only one default slot, and opening more required module stones, a resource so scarce and unreliable that it usually became the biggest bottleneck for ordinary players. For Lu Chen, it was simply a matter of brute forcing through with his endless supply. He handed Barak a mountain of module stones and had him open every slot possible on the bow, his tactical hunting quiver, and each piece of his armor set in turn. Cloak, belt, ring, and the rest, until his entire equipment loadout was maxed to its current slot cap. Barak then spent a full 4 hours crafting one copy of each module from the blueprints Lu Chen provided, finally delivering them along with a casual reward of 20 purple gold coins that left Barak's eyes wide at the generosity. Lu Chen equipped everything at once. The bow gained armor-piercing, soul-hunting amplification, and weakness penetration modules. The quiver gained purifying, poison burst, and rapid-fire configurations. And each piece of armor received its own combination of modules focused on vitality, black mist resistance, soul-hunting condensation, weakness perception, evasion, displacement afterimages, mental resistance, and weakness critical hit. The resulting stack of effects across his full loadout was staggering, and Lu Chen felt his combat power climbing almost exponentially. Eager to test it, he asked Barak for a target dummy, and with nothing more than a single ordinary arrow. No skills at all. The various module effects chained together and obliterated the excellence grade practice target into ash, leaving him thoroughly pleased with the result. He spent the following hours having Barak convert his remaining materials into new traps and arrows for future use, before finally leaving the workshop to head toward the City Lord's mansion to check the Merit Exchange Hall. There, he was ushered inside to a council hall where City Lord Khan awaited alongside the City Guard Commander, Grey Sun, and a woman in a dark blue mage robe carrying a black and red scepter. Lu Chen wondered silently why Grey Sun and this mage were present, but City Lord Khan wasted no time, praising Lu Chen's decisive role in the Beast Tide, destroying the old outpost's pollution node, saving Grayson, and reinforcing the outer defense line at the critical moment, crediting him with sparing the city far greater destruction. Khan then granted Lu Chen VIP permissions to the city, unlocking access to the high-level merit shop, special commissions from the Lord's mansion, and discounts on non-unique goods, along with an infinite quantity merit exchange voucher capable of offsetting the cost of any single epic grade or lower item once. A gift that delighted Lu Chen, given how easily infinite copies could be exploited. Curious whether there might be a third reward, he was granted a Black Stone Core Pass token, a unique, non-duplicable permission item, prompting him to ask what exactly the Black Stone Core was. Khan deferred to the woman beside him, Mages Association Vice President Evelyn, who explained that Black Stone City's true foundation wasn't just its walls and guards, but an underground core stabilizing the region's ley lines and supporting its defensive barrier. Should the core destabilize, the entire city's defenses would be compromised. Khan revealed that the core had experienced a brief fluctuation during the Beast Tide, and combined with Grayson's report about Lu Chen's ability to perceive the pollution root systems. He wanted Lu Chen to accompany Evelyn underground to inspect it personally, promising additional merit points as compensation. The mention of merit points immediately won Lu Chen over, and Khan, amused at his mercenary attitude, arranged for the core's entrance to be prepared while granting an advance bonus of 50,000 merit points on the spot. After thanking Khan, Lu Chen was led to the Merit Exchange Hall adjacent to the mansion, where the system confirmed his newly unlocked high-level shop. Its inventory dramatically superior to the standard Merit store. Epic-grade armor sets and weapons, rare skill books, high-tier consumables, epic-grade materials, blueprints for defensive structures, and special exchanges including prestige tokens, contribution chests, and profession-related vouchers, giving Lu Chen plenty to consider as he looked over the expanded list. Lu Chen scanned the shop, acknowledging that its offerings were indeed a full tier above the standard store, with excellent grade equipment that would make ordinary players fight tooth and nail for a single piece. But for him, individual gear held low priority compared to finding something that could truly snowball his growth. He focused on the materials section instead, quickly deciding to sweep up every excellent grade item available using his infinite vouchers regardless of immediate need, pulling in enhancement stones, module stones, crystals, and rune stones one after another while the old steward overseeing the exchange twitched visibly at the pace of depletion, muttering under his breath about how many vouchers the city lord had actually handed out. Continuing deeper into the shop, Lu Chen reached a special limited area where vouchers couldn't be used and only direct merit points applied, finding exactly the kind of high-value resources he wanted. A perfect-grade random equipment chest, a perfect-grade random skill scroll, tactical and defensive scrolls, and, most intriguingly, 2 special sub-profession vouchers for Battlefield Alchemist and Rune Mechanic. Professions with an entry barrier so high that ordinary players couldn't access them, no matter how much wealth they had. Lu Chen recognized the potential immediately. Battlefield Alchemist could turn his endless raw materials into usable combat consumables, while Rune Mechanic tied directly into his growing interest in traps, modules, and barriers. Torn between wanting both but only having exactly enough merit points to cover them together, he decided within moments that merit points could always be earned again, while such rare vouchers might never reappear, and spent his entire 60,000 point balance to claim both at once, leaving his balance at 0. Despite feeling a small pang at wiping out his points so completely, he consoled himself that the investment was worth it. Examining the details of both vouchers, each granting a one-time introductory assessment at their respective Blackstone City workshops, with failure costing the voucher entirely and requiring a repurchase to try again. Looking over the 2 exam vouchers he'd acquired, Lu Chen wasn't fazed at all. Since a voucher normally allowed only one attempt, but he'd exploited a bug giving him an infinitely duplicating pass, meaning he could attempt the assessments endlessly. He winced privately at having spent 30,000 merit points, but reasoned that infinite retries more than made up for it, especially now that his combat power had reached the peak of a second transfer class, soon to be compounded further by 2 secondary professions stacking on top. Just then, a city guard arrived to inform him that the entrance to the Blackstone core area was ready, and that Vice President Evelyn was waiting underground. Lu Chen followed the guard back to the city lord's mansion, this time descending a long stone stairway lined with dark golden runes into the depths beneath the building, where Evelyn waited before a massive black stone door, her mage robe shimmering faintly. She greeted him warmly, remarking on his good haul from the Merit store, which Lu Chen confirmed with satisfaction, and the two agreed to proceed immediately. Evelyn warned him not to touch any runes or attack any structures inside the core area, since everything there was tied to the city's ley lines, then activated the door using both their pass tokens, verifying their identities before it slowly ground open. As they walked the long passage together, Evelyn made a passing remark that Grayson had been praising him, a comment that left Lu Chen more unsettled than flattered, joking to himself that he'd rather Grayson simply not badmouth him at all. 10 minutes in, Evelyn abruptly proposed a trade, startling Lu Chen with the blunt phrasing before clarifying she meant a legitimate business exchange. Specifically, she wanted his sky wings, having learned of them after spotting a similar pair displayed at the White River Alliance's territory, evidently used by Bai's guild to boost their reputation. Evelyn explained that mages, despite their strong damage, suffered from poor mobility, especially against aerial or highly mobile threats, and that reliable flight capability could open new tactical options for her association. In exchange, she offered a perfect-grade thunderstorm imprisonment scroll, and when Lu Chen dismissed it as useless to an archer, she revealed the crucial detail. It was a one-time skill scroll usable by any class regardless of their actual abilities, since the spell was pre-sealed within it. This revelation struck Lu Chen deeply. To him, a supposedly one-time scroll became, with his duplication exploit, an infinite supply of powerful effects from any class entirely, opening the door to collecting the strongest skills across the game regardless of his own class restrictions. Thrilled at the implication, he agreed to trade his sky wings for the scroll, and the exchange went through cleanly. the item entering his backpack in infinite quantity immediately. Lu Chen could barely contain his satisfaction at how profitable the trade had been. Evelyn put away the firmament wings, praising his generosity, and Lu Chen encouraged her to bring more powerful one-time scrolls his way in the future, which Evelyn noted with interest, observing that he seemed particularly drawn to such items. Something she didn't dispute, since these scrolls were among the Mages Association's most valuable resources, ordinarily far beyond an outsider's reach for trade. But her gaze soon shifted to the Thunder Wings still on Lu Chen's back, clearly more powerful than the ones she'd just acquired, and she asked outright whether those might also be up for trade. Lu Chen smiled and told her she'd need to bring something worthy enough, prompting Evelyn to reveal that the Mages Association held the entrance to a secret realm, the resting place of a fallen archmage, once the association's former president, who had left behind vast spell manuscripts and sealed spells, some of extraordinary battlefield-level power, though the realm's internal chaos made it nearly impossible for ordinary teams to explore safely. Evelyn proposed that if Lu Chen helped clear the secret realm, the association would transfer a copy of every scroll-convertible spell recovered to him, an offer Lu Chen found promising but insufficient, countering that he deserved his own dedicated one-time scroll copies as a reward for clearing the dungeon, while any purchase of his Thunder Wings themselves would require far more. Evelyn, though inwardly startled at how favorable the overall deal already was for her side, offered him honorary guest status at the Mages Association with full purchasing access and internal permissions, which Lu Chen accepted, though he wanted to first examine the Archmage's actual spells to judge their usefulness. Evelyn produced a crystal containing partial records of the Archmage's spell catalog, revealing a string of astonishing entries. A battlefield-level fire spell capable of summoning devastating meteor strikes, an ice control spell that could freeze and imprison entire areas, a lightning burst spell effective against dark and undead targets, and a spatial defense spell capable of deflecting ranged attacks, each rated perfect or epic grade despite being incomplete records. Lu Chen's excitement grew with every entry, imagining the possibilities of wielding such spells as consumable, cooldown-free scrolls in future battles. When Evelyn asked if the deal now seemed sincere enough, he agreed, though he pressed for details on the secret realm's danger level. She admitted it was extremely high, filled with chaotic leftover spell turbulence, capable of killing unprepared teams outright, along with potentially uncontrolled spell puppets deeper within. Undeterred, Lu Chen agreed to enter once his current commitment, checking the black stone core, was finished. As they reached the depths of the underground passage, a massive black crystal core the size of a house came into view, suspended above an intricate rune array. Evelyn explained this was the black stone core, the true foundation of Blackstone City's safety, and Lu Chen activated soul-hunting vision to inspect it directly, finding the energy patterns stable with no visible abnormalities. A result that visibly relieved Evelyn, who agreed the city lord's concerns had likely been overcautious this time, though she noted the situation could shift if the forest's troubles dragged on. Deep within the core itself, however, an almost imperceptible black trace slowly began to stir, unnoticed by either of them as they turned to leave. Back in the council hall, City Lord Khan, Grayson, the city guard commander, and several other officials waited anxiously for their return. Khan asked immediately how it had gone, and Evelyn reported calmly that the black stone core remained stable, with both her and Lu Chen finding no traces of corruption, prompting a visible sigh of relief from both Khan and Grayson, the latter noting how badly the sunken ancient forest incident had worried him about the city's underground stability. Evelyn added that once the old outpost corruption node had been destroyed, the pollution hadn't continued spreading to the core, and Lu Chen agreed, though he cautioned that the forest situation still warranted vigilance, since the outpost might have only been one node among possibly more hidden threats. Khan agreed, promising continued surveillance of the forest, and thanking Lu Chen sincerely for his effort checking the core, rewarding him on the spot with a substantial experience bonus, reputation gain, and improved standing with the Lord's mansion. Khan then suggested Lu Chen take some well-earned rest given the lack of urgent commissions, though Lu Chen inwardly dismissed the idea entirely, reflecting wryly that resting wasn't an option for someone in his position as a mere descender among powerful NPCs. He and Evelyn both took their leave together, cupping their fists respectfully before departing the mansion. Outside, the city streets buzzed with recovering normalcy and lingering chatter about the Beast Tide's dramatic conclusion, with many players recounting how close they'd come to disaster and lamenting lifespan losses suffered during the crisis, some even reduced to comically begging on the street for lifespan crystals. Amused by the sight, Lu Chen firmly refused to help when Evelyn teased him about it, reasoning coldly that the weak simply had to accept their position. a stance Evelyn silently agreed with, understanding that showing mercy in Blackstone City's cutthroat environment often invited exploitation rather than gratitude. She then handed him a Silver Blue Mages Association guest badge, granting him access to the association's inner areas, shop, scroll library, quest hall, and outer spell data rooms, along with purchase discounts. Benefits Lu Chen accepted with mild interest despite already having infinite copies of the badge itself. The two proceeded to the Mages Association Tower, where curious mages whispered among themselves at the sight of a Hunter Association figure being personally escorted by their vice president, understanding immediately the unusual prestige such an honor represented. In the quest hall, Evelyn pulled up a special commission, the Archmage's Legacy Secret Realm Exploration, a high-risk, high-reward quest offering experience in Mages Association standing, which Lu Chen accepted without hesitation.